Good morning, everyone, and good to see you all here. And great job for taking all the efforts to wake up early in the morning and join this call. And I'm sure this change, right? The thing that you have done, like joining this call, will definitely change your future. And again, one more thing: if you follow right everything step by step, what I teach you in these 3 days, you will be one step closer to your goal. And again, unlike 95% of the students who just dream of landing a high-paying job, just dream of learning skills, but without taking any action, you are the action taker because you have taken the first step, unlike other students. So I'd like to congratulate each one of you for taking effort and making taking the first step. Okay, and let me know like if you are an action taker or not. Comment 80 in the chat and let me know if you are an action taker. So with that, right, let's get started. Okay, I see many responses. All right. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so I'll get started with a brief introduction about myself. All right, so my name is Prashant Nayak, and I completed my engineering in the year 2008 uh, as computer science engineer, and then I have around like 15 years of more than 15 years of experience in the IT industry. I'm currently working as a software QA, and when I started my career, right, as a software QA, I started as a manual tester, okay, wherein I used to test the applications manually, and then I transitioned my career as a automation tester, wherein I worked on different automation tools like I started with QTP, UFT, and then again I learned different tools, Expertise for mobile, and then Selenium with Java as well. So there are different tools that I worked on as part of automation tester, and then I quickly upgraded my skill sets to performance testing. Okay, and when I talk about performance testing, right, the tools that I used, I started with the Neoload and then worked on Load Runner tool as well. And currently, like I'm working on JMeter. Okay, so JMeter is an open source tool that is free to use. Okay, so that's the tool which is currently going on in the market and it is very popular among different companies. And most of the companies, right, as part of the performance testing, they use JMeter tool in their organization. So that's what I'm working as right now as a performance tester. Okay, I just wanted to tell you one more thing. So when I started, uh, I switched my career right to performance testing as a performance test engineer. So that helped me. That changed a lot for me when I talk about the salary, right? So once I transitioned to performance testing, I started earning like six figures per month. Okay, so that's the thing that I wanted to highlight because performance testing is again uh, is in demand in the market right now because each and every application, right? They want the company wants them like it to be performance tested just to make sure that the application is fast to respond to the end user. So that's the reason why the performance testing is very popular nowadays, and nowadays like there is a lot of adoption to the online software, and that is another reason why performance testing is very popular. Okay. And in addition to that, right, the technical part, I am also a part of interview panel wherein my roles and responsibilities involve uh, going through the resume, shortlisting the resume, then taking the interviews and selecting the candidate. Okay, so that's again I have been doing since many years, and that is one of the reason, right? I know in and out like how to select the candidate and why candidates gets rejected, right? Candidate gets rejected, that also I know in and out. So that's another thing that I wanted to highlight. All right, so moving ahead, right? So I have created a Facebook group as well. Okay, so this is a private Facebook group wherein you can share the assignments that I'll be asking you to do today and tomorrow and in these 3 days, right? So what I would want you to do is click on this link. I'll be sharing this link on the WhatsApp group as well after this call. Okay, I want you to click on the link and then join the group, and that group will be very helpful for you because the assignments that I'll be asking right for you to work on, you can share those assignments in the group. And again, not only assignment, if you have any specific questions, right, related to the software testing, you can post it in the group. I'll make sure I respond to your questions. And again, it's not only me, right? Again, for you, if you like, we should create a community of the software testers. Okay, so in case like you post a question, right, and someone else has got an answer to that, then they can also reply to the question and help each other. So again, there is one more thing. Okay, so just learning is not sufficient. If you help others, right, and that will indirectly help you learn many more things. Okay, so that is the reason why I'm insisting you all to join the group and help each other rather than just posting the question and then waiting for me to respond. Yeah, it will help you guys if you help each other as well. Okay, so this is the link. Okay, I'll be sharing it on the WhatsApp group chat as well. And here is the secret code. Okay, so when you click on that link, right, it will ask you to enter a secret code. So this is the secret code that you need to enter, because I don't want like any random folk to join this group. So this is what you need to enter, and this way I'll come to know that you have joined from this group, and I can approve your request. Okay, so it is a private group. It does not have access to any like members outside of this group. Okay, like outside of this challenge, whoever attended the challenge, only they will have access to this specific group. Okay, so that's the reason why we have the secret code in order to get approved to the group. All right. And one more thing, okay? What I want you to do, right? There is a Q&A tab, and anytime if you have any question, anything, okay, related to software testing or anything else, just make sure that you post it on the Q&A, okay, that specific tab, and I'll make sure I respond to your queries during the call. Okay. So just wanted to let you know for this thing. And second, and yeah, let's move ahead. So another thing I wanted to tell you, okay. So before we move ahead, right? So make sure that you take notes, okay. Get pen and paper, because there are many things that we are going to discuss in these 3 days. Okay. If you take a note, right, and take notes, then it will help you revise whenever you go through the sections again, right, through recordings and all, through this through the study material that I'll be sharing. So if you take brief notes about what you will be learning today, okay, in these 3 days, it will be helpful for you to quickly glance through the different things that you learned. Okay, so that is another important thing I wanted to highlight, taking notes. Okay, so let's get started. Let's understand what all things are we going to cover in these 3 days. Okay, so the first thing, right, for day one, we'll be going through uh, like how exactly IT projects work. Okay, so we'll be going through step by step. I'll make you understand like exactly when we have do a project in the IT industry or in the IT company. So there are series of steps that we follow. There are different terminologies that we follow, or we need to understand. Okay, when we work as part of the IT industry, so I'll be walking you through those terminologies as well. Okay, and once that is done, once you understand the basics, the software testing, like basic terminologies used in the software testing and IT industry, and once you understand how IT projects work, then we'll deep dive into software testing concepts. Okay, so in software testing concepts, we'll understand what exactly software testing is. We'll talk about different levels of software testing. Then we'll talk about different types of software testing as well. And as part of the bonus, right, what I'll be doing is for day one, I'll be talking briefly about the performance testing basics. Okay, we won't go in depth on performance testing basics, but we'll quickly cover performance testing basics so that you understand, you get a feel of what exactly performance testing is, and uh, basic idea of performance testing, so that you are aware of that specific topic. Okay, so that's what we are going to cover as part of day one. Okay, and then as part of day two, right, tomorrow. So what we are going to do is we are going to do hands-on tomorrow. Okay, so it will be purely hands-on session. tomorrow, wherein we'll first understand the requirement documents. We'll go through a sample requirement document to understand how exactly requirement document looks and what are the different components of requirement document. And then we'll work on test case scenario creation, test case creation, and we'll do the test execution. Okay. And again, for these three things, right? So I'll be sharing the template as well with you guys so that you can use the template whenever you work on your project, right? You can simply pick that template and plug into your project and get started with it rather than spending time creating the template by yourself. I'll be sharing the template with you tomorrow. And once we do the test execution, if you find any defect, right, that needs to be reported as part of the software testing protocol. So we'll be doing that as well tomorrow. We'll be creating a defect report and I'll share the template as well for defect report, what all things need to be included. And again, we'll be talking more in depth on these three topics on what are the different components of this topic. We'll be talking about that. And then once the execution defect, everything is done, the ideal task is to send out the execution summary report to the stakeholders. So we'll do that as well. We'll create the execution summary and then will and then for you, right, I'll give you one homework that you need to complete and post it on the Facebook group. So that's what we are going to do as part of day two. And for day three, right, it will be very important. Okay, so day three is very important because we are going to talk about resume. Okay, we'll first understand how to create a portfolio. Okay, again, if you guys like do not have job or if you are trying to switch from one domain, right? If you do not have any work experience in software testing, and if you are trying to switch your career to software testing, then it is very important to have a portfolio so that you can showcase your work. If you're already working as a software QA, then maybe you already have worked on a project that you can showcase in your resume. But again, if you don't have any past experience related to software testing, then it is very important to create a portfolio. So we'll talk about the portfolio creation part in day three. And then we'll talk about the effective resume template and we'll talk about different components of resume that makes a great resume. Okay, we'll be talking about that. I'll be sharing the templates for a resume. Okay, and then we'll do the resume creation workshop as well as part of day three. And I have another bonus for you as part of day three. Okay, so I'll be disclosing that on day three itself. Okay. All right. Any questions you guys have got? Just let me know in the Q&A section, Q&A tab. Okay, Sanket is saying, please share WhatsApp group link. Okay. So Sanket, when you registered, right, you should have received the link in the email. Okay, along with this webinar registration link. So I would suggest check the email, or else what I can do, right? Um, can you drop me an email? Okay. So my email ID is prashant@aptitudes.com. I'll type it here. So here is my email ID. Okay. So what I would suggest, right, Sanket, send me an email. I'll make sure like I add you to the WhatsApp group. Okay. Just as a reminder, I'll give it a try. Like after this call, I'll add you. Okay. But in case I forget, then uh, please send me an email. All right. So let's move ahead. Okay. So before we get in depth on the software testing skills, I quickly wanted to brief you about the demand that we have in the market. Okay, as a software tester, the reason being like this thing, right? Software testing is in very high demand right now. Okay. Again, a reason being all the companies, right, that we have software companies, they develop software. They want to make sure that the software they develop is tested before it reaches the end user. And again, one important thing here is okay. So if the software is not tested and we release the software to the production, okay, and let's say end user paid for the product, paid for the software, and started using the application or the software, okay, and he finds that the software is not working as expected. There is a bug in the software or something which is like the user experience, right? It's not that great. And the end user is not happy. Okay. in that case, right, what happens? The overall reputation of the company who built the software and that gets damaged. Okay. So that is the reason why it is very important to make sure that the software is tested before it is launched to the production. Okay, before it is launched to the end user. And that is the reason why software testing skill is in very high demand. Okay, and when I did a research right in glassdoor.com, the average salary for the software QA engineer is 6,72,500 per year in India. So this is based on the research or based on the uh, information, okay, that was received into 2023. Okay, so based on that, this is the average salary of entry level software QA engineer in India. Okay, and the second thing is regarding the performance testing. If you remember, I mentioned briefly about the performance testing skills that I have. Okay, and performance testing is also like in demand at this moment because almost like everything is online now. Okay, after COVID, most like everything is online. Majorly everything is online, and with this new adoption, right, with the online applications and all, what the thing is happening is, um, with many users accessing the application, there is very high chance that the performance of the application might get impacted. Okay, so let's take an example of Gmail application, and Gmail is currently being used by like billions of users. Okay, so all the users are accessing the application at the same time, and let's assume that there is a performance issue in the Gmail application. A user starts facing an issue related to loading of the application. When they try to click on send, they are not able to send because the application is not that performant. Okay, in that case, user will get frustrated and they'll stop using the application, and there will be a lot of complaints or the application right on the platform, let's say a Google Store or App Store. The, the users will provide negative feedback to the app developer. So that's the reason why it's very important that when the product is released, it is also performance tested so that the users, right, that we are estimating, let's say I'm estimating for my application, I'm estimating that 300 users will access the application at the same time. So as a developer, I want to make sure that my application can handle at least 300 users concurrently at the same time, and it is quick, and it responds in let's say 1 second or 2 seconds if a user try to perform any action in the application. Okay, so in order to do that, right, I'll make sure that my application is performance tested, and that is the reason why performance testing is also in very high demand right now. And again, depending and based on the glassdoor.com, okay, so the average salary for performance test engineer, again I'm talking about the entry level performance test engineer, is 7,92,288 per year. Okay, so this is the average salary for performance test engineer in India, again based on the information, based on the data uh, of the year 2023. All right, so that's about the performance testing. Now let's get started, okay? So as I mentioned earlier, I'll get started with the terminologies that we used in the IT industry, and then we'll move on to the skills, like software testing skills. So talking about the terminologies, right, there are a few things that you guys need to understand, you guys need to learn before you go ahead. Okay, so the first thing is project. Okay, so what exactly is project? So project is a task undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result characterized by a set of specific objectives. Okay, so let's take an example. Okay, so a company XYZ, okay, comes to me. Okay, I am a QA. Okay, I have a company and I provide QA service. Okay, so company XYZ comes to me and tells me that I have this specific application. I want you to test this application. I want you to do software QA testing on this specific application. Okay, so I say yes. Accept that request, and I get started working on it. Okay, so that task, right, that I'll be performing, the testing task that I'll be performing on the application. Okay, so that overall task is called a project. Okay, and then the company, right, XYZ, who comes to me and gives me that specific project for me, and that company is a client. Okay, and for that client, right, uh, who gave me the project, uh, for them and the vendor. Okay, so vendor is the service provider. Okay, and if you see the definition, a client refers to an individual, group, or entity that uses the service, expertise, or products provided by another individual, group, or entity. Okay. So for me, company XYZ is a client, and vendor refers to individual, group, or entity that sells goods, services, or products to clients. So I'm providing my software testing QA services. So for company XYZ, I'm the vendor. Okay. So that's the basic that you need to understand. And then the next thing is about the requirement. Okay. So requirement refers to a documented description of the capabilities, features, functionalities, or qualities that a system, product, service, or process must possess. Okay. So let's take an example of a Gmail. Okay. So Gmail has a certain set of requirements or a certain set of functionalities. Okay. So Gmail can send any using the Gmail app. User can draft an email, can send an email. It can view the read the email. Okay, user can read the email. A user can then delete the email. So these are certain things, qualities of the application. Okay, and again, there can be other requirement as well, like the usability requirement, wherein it can say that the font size of the Gmail app, the font size of the application, right? So the fonts used in the application should have, let's say, 16 pixels. Okay, so that is another requirement. There can be one more requirement saying that when I click on delete, okay, the email should go to the trash and a trash folder. So that can be another requirement. Okay, so that is called the requirement. So requirement is the set of statements, okay, that tells what exactly the application is supposed to do. Okay, and again, requirement can be termed as business requirement and functional requirement. And function, what is functional requirement? Functional requirement are the requirement that talk the requirements are the requirement that talk majorly about the functionality of the application. So when I say functionality, right, the way the application is used by the end user, that can be termed as a functionality. So in case of Gmail, uh, sending out the email, okay, that can be termed as one functionality. And then let's say there is the requirement, right, second requirement related to receiving of the email from someone who sends an email, that the other user should be able to receive it. Okay, so the receipt of the email, right, so that can be another functionality. So that is called and then the document that defines that the functionality of the application, that is called the functional requirement document. And then we have business requirement document. So that is a very high, that specifies very high level objective that a project or product should achieve. It's majorly on a very high level, or I would say the requirement for the business. Okay, so in case of Gmail, on a very high level, the requirement can say that the user should be able to send and receive an email, and the user should be the application should be user friendly. That can be termed as a business requirement. It's majorly specific to a business, just to make sure that the high level objective is understood. Okay, so that's the purpose of business requirement. And again, it can talk about the revenue as well. That it can say that this specific should bring like uh, X amount of revenue to the company, something like that. So on a very high level, so something that is important for the business, that is specified in the business requirement document. Okay. Then we'll move on to the next one. We'll talk about defect. Okay. What is defect? Any deviation or flaw in software application or system that causes it to behave in an unintended or incorrect way. Okay, so let's take an example of Gmail application. Okay, one of the requirements says that when a user composes an email and clicks on send button, email should be sent to the receiver. Okay, now let's say user performed that action. A user clicked on compose button and then typed the subject, typed the body, entered the email ID in the to field, and clicked on send. Okay, so what we are expecting here, we are expecting that email should be sent. Okay, so when the user clicked on send, uh, he or she got an error message saying that there was some issue at the server level and email could not be sent. Okay, so that is the deviation. Okay, expected was email should be sent, but what happened actually was email could not email did not get sent. Okay, so that is the deviation between actual and expected. Okay, and that is called defect. So defect is a deviation of flaw in the application that causes it to behave in an unintended or incorrect way. Okay, so that's the definition of defect. And reliability and quality, right? So the next two terms, they are related to the defect. So what is reliability? Reliability refers to the consistency and dependability of a software system to perform its intended function accurately and consistently. Okay, so when I say right, an application is reliable, it means that the application is working as it is expected to work. Okay, the application is working as it is expected to work every time I use it. Okay, then I can say that the application is reliable. I can reliably use this application to do the task and that it is supposed to do. Okay, so that's the definition of reliability. And then quality, again, it's related to the defect. So quality at, refers to the degree to which a software application or system conforms to specified requirements, meets user expectations, and satisfies its intended purpose effectively and efficiently. Quality and reliability, right? They both go hand in hand. And when I say quality, right, if the end user experience, okay, is very good, we can say that the application is of very good quality. If it meets the expectation, so when we go through the requirement document, it has got a specified set of expectation that application is supposed to do. If all the expectation, right, is met by the application, okay, if it is doing what is supposed to be doing, then we can say that the application is of great quality. And let's say for the Gmail application, if everything is working perfectly fine, if the end user is happy, we can say that the quality is good. But let's say the application, Gmail application, few of the features are not working. Uh, sending of email is not working, or we can, if I try to delete the email and if it is not working, the deletion process is not working as expected, we can say that the application, Gmail application, is not that great quality. Okay, that's how we can relate the quality and reliability. Again, both of these terms are related to defect. Okay, and if you have any question, do let me know. Uh, there is one question. Do we get recordings and any material related to the session? Yeah, you will get materials related to sessions, and regarding the recording, that I'll share it after the call. Okay, maybe like in the evening, I'll be sharing it because it needs to be processed and it takes some time to get the recording processed. But definitely, you guys will get it. Okay. And what I would suggest that even if you are getting the recording, make sure you attend this session because there are many things that you will learn as part of the session. We might have like a couple of questions, so in your mind. So make sure you attend it so that you can get it addressed during the live call rather than going through the recording and then uh, realizing that there were a couple of questions that it was important to get it resolved but could not do it because you did not attend it. Okay. All right, so let's move ahead to understand how exactly QA projects work in IT industry. Okay, so what happens, right, when there is a specific need for a client to get the thing done, like let's say a client Gmail application, Google, right? They want their Gmail application to be tested for quality. Okay, so what happens is in Gmail, okay, let's say Google identifies a vendor. Let's say they identified me as a vendor. So Google will come to me and tell me that this is the requirement and I want you to test this specific application, make sure that this application is free of issue, free of bug. Okay, so they'll come to me, and depending on the level of testing that is needed, right, if I have that expertise available, I'll accept the project. Okay, I'll say yes to them. Once that is done, I will start with the QA activity, or if I have a team, then I'll assign a QA tester to the project, and then QA performs the testing. Okay, he or she will do the testing activity, and once the testing is performed, If you remember, I mentioned about the execution summary document and all. So that is part of the QA sign off. Okay, so once the execution is performed, the QA will send out a sign off email or sign off letter to the client. Okay, and once the client accepts that sign off letter, okay, that sign off may consist of like different information of the things that was done as part of the execution and whether the execution passed or failed, overall status of the execution. It consists of that, and then client accepts it. Once a client accepts the QA sign off, the software is released in the market for the uh, end user to access it. Okay, so that's a very high level uh, workflow, how exactly IT projects work. Okay, moving ahead. Uh, Before we do that, right? Let's and go through the Q&A. Okay, so if you guys have any question, please post it on the chat. And if you don't have any question, please let me know saying that no. Can you reply no on the Q&A saying that, which means you don't have any question? Just reply no in the Q&A chat. Okay, so many folks are replying no. Okay, that's great. Great that you are able to understand it. So I have a poll for you. Okay, one question. So what I'll be doing that during the entire session, I'll be sending out series of uh, polls. Okay, wherein you will get an opportunity to answer it so that um, the concepts and gets cleared, and you understand how exactly things are. Okay, and even for me also, right? I'll get a fair idea of your understanding as well. So I have one poll for you. Okay, so I would suggest you respond to it right away, and I'll give you 1 minute for responding. Okay, I'll publish the result. Okay, so any deviation or flaw, right, in a software is known as a defect. So if you remember, I mentioned about the defect, wherein if there is a deviation between the expected and actual, if expected is not uh, behave is expected and actual is different, then we call it as a defect. Okay, so that is a deviation of flaw in a software. Okay, it is not a requirement, it's not a project. So it's a defect. Any deviation of flaw in a software is known as a defect. Okay, all right. So let's move on. Okay, with the software testing concept. So what exactly is software testing? So software testing is a process. Okay, it's a process. Okay, of evaluating a software application or system to find if it meets specified requirements. If you remember, I mentioned about the requirement. A specific software has got software has got a requirement document which lists the requirements, what application is supposed to do. Okay, so software testing is process of evaluating a software, okay, against the requirements that we have to see if it meets that requirement or not. Okay, so that is the process. Okay, that is called the software testing process. Okay, evaluating an application, we'll compare the application against the requirements, and and we'll check if the application is meeting the requirement or not. Okay, so that's the very simple and basic definition of software testing. And what is the goal of software testing? So there are like these four major goals of software testing. So the first goal is to find defect. Okay, so this is very important goal of software testing is to identify a defect. And again, based on the definition, what we are doing is software testing. We are comparing the actual versus expected. Okay, and if there is a mismatch, then we say that there is a defect. Okay, and the definition says that software testing is a process to check if the software is matching the requirement or not. Okay, so that is the main goal, to find defect. Like if it is not matching, then it means that that we have a defect in the software. Okay, so the first goal is finding the defect. Okay, the second goal is verifying the functionality, making sure that the expected and actual are matching. And then the third one is ensuring the reliability, making sure that the software is reliable to use uh, to the end user, for the end user. So that is another important goal. And then the last goal is improving quality. So making sure that we identify a defect, we find a defect, and making sure that we get it fixed during the uh, execution cycle. We share it with the developer and make sure that we get the defect fixed to make sure that the application is defect free, thus improving the quality of the defect, quality of the software. Okay, so these are the uh, four goals of the software testing. One is finding defect, second is verifying functionality, one is ensuring reliability, and the fourth one is improving quality. Okay. Again, before we move ahead, I have one more poll for you. Sorry. Yeah, I have one more poll for you. Which of the following is a goal of software testing? Is it to identify defect, to get client, to review document? I'll wait for like 10 more seconds before I publish the result. Okay, great. I think everyone answered it correctly. The main goal, the goal of the software testing is to identify defect. That's great job. 100% of the folks answered it correctly. All right. So let's talk about the principles of software testing. Okay. So there are like certain things that we need to consider, principles we need to consider when we do the software testing. Okay. So that's something which has to be remembered. And this is again very important, right? When you talk about the job interview, in the interview for a fresher, this is the most commonly question that is asked. Okay, regarding the principles of software testing, you'll be asked what are the different types of, what are the different principles of software testing. You'll be asked to list them and explain each one of them. Okay, so just make sure you make a note of this one. Okay, and just try to understand what exactly these principles are. So the first principle, right, is says that the testing shows the presence of defects. Okay, so when we do the software testing, our goal is to identify a defect. Okay, and testing will show the presence of defect. It will not show the absence of defect. So that's very important to understand. Okay, so that is the that is the first principle, saying that the testing shows presence of defect. The second one says that exhaustive testing is not possible. We can test a software application up to a certain limit. Okay, and let's say I have been assigned a task to do software testing. Okay, I can test it for like 10 days, 20 days, 15 days, and I can cover most of the functionalities that we have in the application, but I can't keep on testing indefinitely uh, to uncover the defect, or to test the different permutation and combination of the application workflow. Okay, so there is a limit that I can uh, have in the software testing process. I can't keep on testing indefinitely, and that is the reason why this principle says that exhaustive testing is not possible. Okay, and then the third principle says that the software testing, right? It talks about the early testing. So when we say early testing, right, we need to make sure that we test the software. We start with the software testing process as early as possible in the development cycle. Okay, so the early we test, the more time we get to have that defect fixed. So what happens, right, when we do the software testing? In the initial part is the development phase. Okay, where developer performs the development of the application. Okay, and then it goes through the testing phase, and then the release to the production. Okay, so let's say we get the product. Okay, the development is in progress. Okay, there are certain functionality that are built, but not the entire thing is built as of now, and we wait for the development team to complete the development of the application before we start with the testing. And let's say after completing the development, we start with the testing, we find many bugs. Okay, then the development team, what they will have to do, right, they'll have to go through the entire code again. They'll have to get it fixed, and there is a very high chance, right, while fixing one specific module, they may break the other functionalities as well. Okay, so in that case, right, if we do delayed testing, if we test very late, then it will impact the overall cycle. Okay, and then they'll have to end up more time spending uh, fixing that specific defect and fixing different part of the application as well. Okay, so in that case, right, it's very like, and it's not good, and the time will be wasted, plus plus the money, right? The client will have to spend more money getting it fixed. Okay, but what happens, right, if we do it, if we do the testing early, let's say during the development cycle, if one module is completed and we start testing that specific module, and if we find the defect early, then we can let the developer know that there is a defect here. Okay, they can fix it right away, and the other modules that will develop right in the future, it will not have any negative impact because of that defect, because that defect was already fixed. Okay, so that is the reason why early testing is important. Okay, and then the fourth principle talks about defect clustering. So defect clustering, okay, follows Pareto principle, which says that 80% of the defect is found in 20% of the module. So let's say we have an application which has got 10 different modules. Let's take an example of Gmail. Okay, so we have inbox module, and then we have send item modules, we have trash module, then we have labels module. Okay, and likewise we have 10 different modules. Then this specific principle says that the 80% of defect, right, that we find in the application will be found in 20% of the module. Maybe out of 10, only two module out of 10, two modules will have 80% of the 80% of the defect that we have reached. Okay, so that's the defect clustering. Then pesticide paradox, the fifth principle. So what happens, right, when we do the software testing, we create test cases before doing the execution. Okay, so pesticide paradox, that's it says that if we keep on repeating same set of test cases every now and then there is a very high chance we'll not find any defect future. Okay, so let's say I have a test case, a test case suite consisting of 100 test cases, okay, for a specific application. And every time I repeat the same set of test cases during the execution, there is a very high chance, like initially for 10, 15 cycles, I'll find defect, but after that, I'll not find any other defect. So that's the pesticide paradox. And that is the reason why it is always recommended that uh, we we revisit the test cases again and again. We revisit the test data as well to make sure that it is up to date, it is updated, and then certain different scenarios needs to be added in the test case suite. Okay, just to make sure that we do not fall prey of pesticide paradox in our testing cycle. Then the sixth principle says that testing is context dependent. Okay, and yeah, so testing is definitely context dependent because different application needs to be tested in a different way. For example, gaming application needs to be tested differently if we compare it with the banking application. Okay, so banking application, we need to take more into consideration about the security of the application while testing the banking application, but that is not the case with the gaming application. Okay, so that is the reason why it says testing is context dependent. Different type of application needs to be tested in a different way. Okay, and then the seventh principle says that absence of errors policy. Uh, we cannot say that the defect is 100% defect free. Okay, that's not true, and it is not, as I mentioned in the principle, as it is mentioned in the principle too, exhaustive testing is not possible. Okay, so that is the reason why we can't test each and everything in the application, and there will be certain areas where defect will be present. Okay, but unknown to us, and that is the reason why principle 7 says absence of error policy, which means that um, application can never be 100% defect free. So when we test the software, right, we can say once this software testing is done, we can say that the software is 99% defect free. But we can never say that a software is 100% defect free. And even during the interview, right, if the interviewer asks you whether you can like deliver 100% defect free product, then you have to say no. You have to say that I can deliver it 99% defect free, but not 100%, because the principle of software, right? Software testing, it says that the software can never have, like, can never be free of any defect. Okay, and it's true, like, you can never make sure that the application is defect free, and that's the thing, and you have to go with it. Okay, you have to accept that fact. All right, so before we move ahead, any question you guys have, please let me know in the Q&A. All right, I have a couple of more polls for you. Okay, just to make sure that you understand the concept. So this one is related to defect clustering. Okay, so defect clustering says 80% of the defect is found in 20% of the application. Is it true or false? I'll wait for like 10 more seconds. Okay, I'll publish the result. So majority of the folks, 80% of the folks has said true, and that is correct. Okay, so defect clustering says 80% of the defect is found in 20% of the application. Okay, all right. And mm, okay, okay, all right. So that is it for from this slide. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so now we'll understand the software testing life cycle. Okay, so what exactly software testing is, and how exactly the process for the software testing is. So we'll talk about that. Okay, so when we talk about the software testing, there is a certain process that needs to be followed. Okay, so the first thing is regarding the requirement analysis. So once we get a requirement, right? If let's say a company comes and tells me that this is the software that you need to test and these are the requirements. Okay, I have a requirement document. They'll share it with me. So as a software tester, my job is to do the requirement analysis. Okay, go through the requirement, understand the different things that we have that the client has mentioned in the requirement, understand what exactly the software is supposed to do. We'll go through that. Okay, and in case we have any question, right, regarding the requirement, then we'll make a note of it. We'll then get back to the client, we'll ask them, we'll get the query resolved. Okay, so that is done as part of requirement document. And then we have test planning phase. Okay, wherein we do the planning for the software testing. I'll talk about it in the next slide. Okay, once the test planning is done, we'll talk about test case development. Okay, we'll do the create test scenario, we'll do the test case creation and all those stuff as part of test development phase. And then we have test requirement. Okay, sorry, test environment setup. So this is done prior to the execution, wherein we make sure that the environment is set up for execution, the application is ready, test data is ready, everything is ready so that we can do the execution. Once that is done, right, we'll do the test execution, we'll do the actual execution of the software, and then once the execution is done, we'll send out the summary report and follow the process for test closure. Okay, I'll talk more about these phases in detail in the upcoming slide. Okay, so let's first talk about the business requirement analysis. So as I mentioned earlier, requirement analysis talks about analysis of the requirement and making sure that you understand the requirement. In case you have any question, then you get those questions answered by the client. And this one is very important. Okay, the reason being, there's the next phase, right, regarding the test planning and then the test scenario creation, test case creation. All of these things are dependent on the requirements. Okay, depending based on the requirement, we'll create a test scenario. Based on the requirement, we'll create test cases. Okay, so if we do not understand the requirement, if there is a gap in the requirement, then there will be a gap in the scenario creation, and there will be a gap in the test cases as well. And this will cause us to test these software in incorrect way. Okay, if requirement something is not clear, then we'll not be able to test the application correctly. And that is the reason why we want to make sure that we follow the requirement analysis phase uh, properly and get everything clarified before we move ahead with the further phase of software testing. Okay. Then we have test planning. Okay, as I mentioned, test planning, it involves creation of comprehensive strategy to guide the testing process. Okay, so here we do the planning for the entire testing phase. Okay, wherein we'll identify what exactly the objective of this testing is. We'll define scope. We'll create test strategy. Okay, when I say test strategy, right, we'll define what exactly needs to be tested, what are the different types of testing needs to be done, okay, at what level, like let's say I want to do unit testing, integration testing, I want to do performance testing, whatever thing that we need to do, right, as part of the testing, we'll define it in the strategy. Okay, then we'll be creating test plan as well, wherein we'll talk about the schedules, we'll talk about timelines, uh, start date, end date, and then we'll talk about the resources as well, like how many members will be working on it, who will be the lead, who will be the manager, and all those stuff will be documented in the test plan. And then we'll talk about risk identification as well. If you see any risk, right, and then we'll document that as well. So when I talk about the risk, I'll give an example. Okay, for Gmail application, one risk can be like application server being down. The server can go down anytime. Okay, so we need to identify that as the risk as well. Just to make sure that we identify it, we have a discussion around that. We create a mitigation plan and contingency plan as well. Like if this occurs, right, what needs to be done to avoid it, to minimize the impact of the risk on the application. So that's something that we'll be documenting. And then we'll talk about the test deliverables as well as part of the testing process. What are things we need to deliver to the client? We'll be documenting that. What kind of communication we need to do, and the review and approval process also needs to be documented as part of the test planning. Okay, so here as part of this phase, we'll create the entire plan for the testing. Okay, so that's something that is again very important. We have to make sure that the plan is created properly and then it is approved by the stakeholders so that they agree to plan, and in case something happens, right, then we can refer to that plan. And again, uh, if let's say there is a delay, then it becomes very easy for us to share the timelines, like upcoming updated timeline with the client. We need to go back to the test plan and get it updated and get it approved again with the client. Okay, and again, having a specific plan helps us do the testing very effectively because we know what needs to be done. Everything is documented. We can refer to it. We know that these are the things that we need to do in sequence, and it will make the entire process more effective. Okay. So that was about test plan. And then we have the test case development phase, okay, wherein we create the test cases depending on the requirement. We'll talk about this tomorrow on how do we create test cases. Okay. It is again part of the testing process, testing phase that involves the creation of detailed test cases that outline specific conditions, actions, and expected outcome. Okay, we'll talk more about it tomorrow. Then we have test environment setup, wherein I mentioned we'll set up the environment, making sure that we have the infrastructure tool, everything is available, so that we can get started with the testing. So this is done as part of the environment setup. And again, not only infrastructure tools, we also need to make sure that the data that we need, right, for software testing is also available uh, in the application environment. Okay. Then once everything is done, I will do the test execution, wherein we'll take the test cases, okay, and we'll start with the execution wherein we'll compare actual versus expected. Okay. So that's what we do as part of the test execution. When we do the test execution, right, we'll actually use the application, okay, that was built by the developers, and compare it with the test cases that we have created. And in the test cases, we have actual versus we have set of steps that needs to be done along with the expected outcome and actual outcome, okay, that needs to be documented. So we do that as part of test execution. And once execution is done, right, our job is to make sure that we do the test closure as well. Okay, so test closure is a final phase of testing process that involves formal conclusion of testing activities for a particular project or release. Okay, so as part of test closure, we send out the summary report to the client saying that so and so modules were tested. So these are the number of test cases that were executed, and these are passed, failed, the overall testing status. Like if overall testing passed or failed, we'll document everything as part of the test closure activity and send it out to the client. Okay, so that's the part of test closure. Okay, so now let's understand the different levels of software testing. Okay, so yeah, so before that, I have a poll for you. So test execution is part of software testing life cycle. Is it true or false? Wait for 10 seconds. Okay, I'll wait for 3 more seconds and then publish the result. All right. So majority of you guys got it correctly. Test execution is part of software testing life cycle. Okay, that's true. All right, so let's move ahead. Okay, levels of software testing. So there are different levels of software testing that we need to take into account. So one is user testing, sorry, unit testing, integration testing, system testing, and acceptance testing. Okay, so I'll explain you this with help of example. Okay, so let's take an example of this specific application. Okay, so usually what happens, right? A software product, it consists of different modules. Okay, and modules are module consist of different functions, and functions has got the lines of code. So let's take an example of Gmail. Okay, so Gmail has got different modules like inbox module, sent item modules, trash module, and within the each module, right? Let's take again with the inbox module, it has got different function like display of the UI screen can be one function. Okay, sending out an email can be another function, or reading the email, getting the reading the email from the server and displaying it on the UI can be another function. And within and this these functions, right, it has got lines of code available in it, written in it, so that it can be executed and appropriate action can be done, taken, and the user is displayed with whatever information he or she wants. Okay, so when you say unit testing, right, unit testing is something that is done by the developer. Okay, that's the thing. It's done by the developer, and unit testing is a process of testing the individual function. Okay, so this function that you see, right, function one, function two. So unit testing is a process of testing the individual function, and it is done by the developer. So let's say developer writes a function to display the email, okay, list of email from the server. So what developer will do, right, developer while after writing the code, and developer will test that specific function to make sure that it is working as expected or not. Okay, then we have the next one is integration testing. Okay, so integration testing talks about the integration of modules. So let's say I want to test the integration of module 1 and module 2. So what I'll do, right, I'll make sure these two modules are connected. Okay, if there are interfaces or anything like connection, something like that, I'll make sure these two are connected, and I'll test the overall application module 1 and module 2 just to make sure that the data or whatever the thing that we need to do, right, these two applications are working as expected or not. So again, let's take an example of Gmail application. Okay, so we have sent item, and then there is a module which allows us to send an email. Okay, so those two modules, right, send an email and send item. So what happens when we send an email, the email after getting sent will appear in the sent item. Okay, so as part of the integration testing, I'll make sure that I'll test those two modules together just to make sure that the interaction between those two modules are uh, working fine. Okay, so that's the integration testing. And then there is system testing as well. The next one, system testing talks about the testing of the overall system. Okay, so let's say I have an application which consists of module 1, module 2, and module 3. So as part of this system testing, what I'll do is I'll test all the modules together, the interaction between these three modules, and make sure that it is working as expected. Okay, so that's the system testing. And then we have usability testing. sorry, acceptance testing. So acceptance testing is done once the entire testing is completed. Okay, system testing is done. We do the acceptance testing wherein we just check the business requirement. Okay, on a very high level, the product team, the business team, they check whether the application is doing what it is expected to do at the business requirement level. Okay, so that's the that's acceptance testing. All right. So just a second. If you guys have any question, right, please post it on the chat. So Nasir is asking, is it mandatory to have graduation for software testing? No, it's not mandatory to have that, because I have seen many folks like do the software testing who are not graduated. Like if you have diploma as well, so there are few companies that take that into consideration as well. Again, if you have skill set, right, if you have a good strong experience, again if you don't have any experience, but if you have like specific skill set, and if you have if you are capable of demonstrating that experience, demonstrating that knowledge, and then it's not that difficult to get the job. So that's again and again, even if you don't want to work in the company, if you want to work as a freelancer as well, right, maybe like you want to uh, get a job through Upwork as a freelancer, or maybe Fiverr as well, then again you can do that with the knowledge. But the only thing is you need to make sure that your concepts are clear, you understand how exactly testing need to be done. Okay, so that's very important. Okay, so there is another question by Prasad. Can you please tell us difference between system testing and system integration testing? So as I mentioned, system testing is the testing of the module, all the modules merged together. And then there is another thing, system integration test. So if you want to test the integration, right, end-to-end integration, let's say the application has got integration with the third-party application. Okay. So the overall end-to-end integration, okay, system app integration. So overall testing of the application, all the modules, along with the testing of those modules with the third party application, just to make sure that the module is correctly working as expected with the third party application. This overall thing, right, is called the system integration testing, also known as end-to-end testing as well. Okay, so testing of the application along with the third party application, not only that specific application, but anything that is related to it which makes an interaction with the uh, application outside of the main application. And this specific testing is called the system integration, making sure everything is working fine end to end. Okay, all right, I don't see any other question. I'll move ahead. Okay, so let's quickly talk about the V model. Okay, so V model is also known as verification and validation model. Okay, and it talks, so what exactly is V model? So V model talks about relationship between the development phase and testing phase. So if you see on the left hand side, we have a development phase, and on the right hand side we have a testing phase. So V model talks just talks about relationship. Okay, it is just a framework. It talks about relationship between development phase and testing phase. So if you see at the bottom right, we have a coding, and then there is a unit testing at the module level. Okay, so when there is a software design, right, with that we have a software design document. Okay, at that time, at that specific phase, okay, we have the integration testing plan, and we create the integration testing scenarios along with the integration testing. And then system testing is associated with the system analysis phase. Okay, wherein at the system analysis we get more information about the overall application architecture. Okay, at that phase we uh, create the system test plan, we create the system test scenario, and the system testing is associated with this phase. And on a very high level requirement gathering, where we get the requirement document, where we get the requirement business requirement document on a very high level. Okay, we get the overall idea of what exactly the requirement is for the business. Okay, at that phase we have the acceptance testing. So V model basically talks about relationship between development phase and the testing phase. And the development phase, right, and we call it as verification phase, and then the testing phase, we call it as validation phase. So what is verification and validation? So verification, right, it answers this question: are we building the product right? So basically, verification talks about the process that is followed as part of the development phase. Okay. And validation answers the question: are we building the right product? Okay. And validation talks about building the product as per the requirement, making sure that the product is right. Okay. We are building the right product, making sure that the product that we are building is matching what we are expected, matching the expectation based on the requirement. So that is the validation. So validation answers: are we building the right product? And verification is majorly related to the process, which answers: are we building the product in a right way or not? Okay. So that's the difference between verification and validation. And another thing is V model, or is also known as verification and validation model, or you also call it as VNV model. Okay. So just remember that. All right. So before we move ahead with the testing process, types of testing, okay, I have one more poll for you. So I would want you guys to respond to that poll. So V model is also known as verification model, validation model, or verification and validation model. Okay, I'll wait for 5 more seconds. Okay, all right, I'll publish the result. I see 100% of the folks answered verification and validation model, which is correct. That's good. Great job that you are able to understand the concepts, the basic concepts. And again, just remember, okay, so these concepts, right, that we are going to learn is very important, because unless until your basics are clear, you won't be able to like excel in the software testing process. So you need to make sure these basics things, right, what I'm explaining today, all theoretical, you understand each of the every concept, because tomorrow when we do the hands-on session, it will be like easy for you to get hold of those concepts. Okay. So all right. So let's move on with the next uh, thing related to types of software testing. So we'll talk about different types of software testing, okay, as part of this one. So the first one is white box testing, okay. So white box testing is a type of application testing that examines the internal structure and design of software application, okay. So white box testing majorly related to testing of the code. Okay, we test the internal structure of the code, and when we do the white box testing, as a tester, I need to make sure that I understand the code, what exactly is written, okay, so that I can test it. So here is an example. Here is an example of a function inside the application. Okay, it performs a calculation of number one and number two, performs addition of number one and number two, and it displays whether the it displays high or low depending on whether the addition is greater than 10 or not. Okay, so this is the code I have. Okay, and when I do the white box testing, right, and now that I know what exactly code is doing, what I'll be doing is I'll test this specific code, okay, for different input value. I'll test it for like number one in two integer value, okay, and I'll see if the response is correct or not. Then there can be another test case where I can test like I pass integer number for number one and string value for number two. In that case, ideally I should receive an error. So looking at this code, right, I will create different permutation and combination to test this specific function. So this is white box testing, wherein you need to understand the code to do the testing, and it's basically testing of the code, testing of the application depending on the based on the code. Okay, so that's what the white box testing is. Then we have black box testing. So in black box testing, we are not concerned anything about the code. We are just concerned about the functionality. So we see the functionality, we see the application. Okay, without thinking about the code, we see the application as just one black box. We don't know the internal functionality. We don't know like how exactly the code is written, how exactly the code workflow is. We are not bothered about that when we do the black box testing. We just simply put the random input and we see whether the output is expected or not. Okay, so that's the black box testing. And majorly what we do, right, in the software testing industry, most of the things, like I would say 80% of the project are related to black box testing, or we can call it as a functional testing as well. Okay, wherein we are not concerned about how the code is written. Okay, we just concerned about the application, the expect the actual and expected. We are only concerned about that. We pass on the input, and if and the output, right, we compare it with the expected. If it is matching, well and good. If it is not, then we'll create a defect. Okay, so that's the black box testing. So I'll keep my Q&A tab open. Okay. All right. So there is one question Prasad is asking: can we say V model is extension to waterfall model? So Prasad, V model, right? It is not an extension to waterfall model. Okay, V model is just a framework. So on the left hand side, right, we can see the waterfall model of the development phase, and on the right hand side, again we see the testing phases as well. So V model, we can say that it shows just the relationship between the development phase and testing phase. We have a development phase in the waterfall model, yes, but V model is showing the relationship between different phases of testing as well as development. So that's what it does. V model is a framework, it shows the relationship. It is not a specific model for development or testing. It is just a framework that shows association between these two phases, like development and testing phases. Okay. So moving on to the next one, unit testing we have already covered. Okay, testing individual units usually done by the developers. Then we have integration testing, wherein we test integration of different modules. Okay, then we have system testing, wherein we test the integration of all the modules that we have in the application. We test the application as a whole. And then we have functional, non-functional testing. Okay, so functional testing, as the name says, it verifies the functionality of the application or software system. We test the function here. We test the functionality of the application, expected versus actual. We do that. And then non-functional testing is not specific to the functionality. Okay, so when we say non-functional, right, the performance testing, then usability testing, security testing, all of these different types of testing falls under non-functional testing. It is not test related to functionality, but we need to make sure that the non-functional aspect, right, when we see non-functional testing, the non-functional aspect, that performance of the application are tested. Again, security of the application is again non-functional aspect. And then the usability, how exactly the end user is able to access the application, whether it is user friendly or not, all those things comes under non-functional aspect of the testing. Okay. And then we have smoke testing. Smoke testing, as definition says, is a software testing method that determines if a new software build is ready for the next testing phase. So smoke testing is basically done just before the testing phase. Okay. So let's say a developer completes the development, and developer wants to assign the application to this software testing team to do the testing activity. So before that, right, what software testing team will do is it will perform a quick check of the application. Okay, just the basic check. For example, whether the login is working or not, whether the application is able to load or not. Just the basic check, just to make sure that it is acceptable. Okay, if the application is not loading, then obviously we can't do the testing, right? So this basic check will be done as part of the smoke testing. Okay, just to make sure this software application is ready for the next testing phase or not. Okay, so that's the purpose of smoke testing. And then we have sanity check. Okay, so let's say we get a build. Okay, we get an application for testing. So sanity check is a quick check. Okay, it is not just intensive software testing. It is just a quick check, just to make sure that the basic functionalities are working fine or not. So if you compare like smoke testing and sanity check, smoke testing is on a very high level. Okay, then comes the sanity check, wherein let's say I have like 100 test cases. Out of those 100 test cases, I will pick like 10 critical test cases, and I will test those things as part of sanity check. So if sanity check fails, right, we will not do any kind of further testing on the application. But if sanity checks passes, then we'll move further ahead with the other types of execution as per the plan. Okay. And then we have end-to-end testing. End-to-end testing I already explained, like testing of the application along with the third-party interfaces, third-party interaction. Okay, so that's end-to-end testing. And then we have regression testing. So regression testing happens, right, when we let's take an example of Gmail. Okay, so for Gmail testing, we have, like, let's assume we have 100 test cases, and one of them is related to the sending of email. Okay, so when we were doing testing, as part being part of the software tester, right? Let's assume I am a software tester. I was doing the testing. I find a defect in sending an email module. Okay, and then I report a defect. I send it to the developer. Okay, so developer fixes it and sends the application back to me. Now, as part of regression testing, right, what I'll do is I'll test that defect. I'll test the functionality related to that defect. Okay, and I'll identify areas which might have impacted because of the defect fix. Okay, so the sent item, right? Let's say sending of an email. Okay, it is associated with the sent item folder as well. So when the email is sent, the email appears in the sent item folder. Okay, so that is one module which is directly related to this specific functionality. So I'll make sure, as part of regression testing, right, I'll identify test cases related to that functionality as well and test it. So by definition, right, regression testing is a type of software testing that verifies whether the recent code change haven't adversely affected existing functionalities. So it is basically testing of the defect, testing of the functionality associated with that defect, plus related modules that we have, related functionalities that we have in the application. So that is called a regression testing. Okay, it does not involve testing of each and everything, only the defect, directly related functionality, and uh, the functionality that is associated with that specific defect or feature. We'll test that as part of the regression testing. Then we have performance testing, like security and usability. So performance testing, I already explained when we started with this session. Okay, it is a type of non-functional test wherein we test the functionality of the application, sorry, performance of the application. Okay, and then security testing is to test the vulnerability of the software against the cyber attacks. Okay, and it is very commonly used. This type of testing is very commonly used in banking application. Okay, wherever there is a money involved, right, or if there is a critical data involved in the application, then the security testing needs to be done there. Okay, then we have usability. As I mentioned earlier, usability testing makes sure that the product, right, is user friendly. Okay, so the uh, process of testing how easy the application is for the end user to use. That is something we do as part of the usability testing. Okay. All right. So if you are able to understand these things, right, can you say yes in the Q&A section in the comments? Can you type yes if things are clear? Okay, till that time I'll answer one more question. So Prasad is asking, who is performing white box testing, tester or developer? So white box testing will be done by the tester after understanding the code. Okay. So Nasir is saying yes. Prasad is saying yes. Right. And Jayant is also saying yes. Great. All right. So let's move ahead. Okay. And before we do that, I have a couple of polls for you so that I understand that you got hold of these concepts. Okay. So the next poll is, white box testing is a type of application testing that examines the internal structure and design of software application. Is it true or false? I'll wait for 10 seconds for you to answer. Okay, I'll wait for 5 more seconds. I'll publish the result. That is awesome. Like, I see all the folks who answered it correctly. The answer is true. That's great. Then I have one more question for you. All right. So dash testing is a way to evaluate how a system performs under a specific workload. Is it a unit testing, integration testing, performance testing, or white box testing? I'll wait for 10 more seconds. Okay, I see folks answering. All right, I'll publish the result. Great. I see like most of the folks answered it performance testing, and that is correct. So performance testing is a way to evaluate how a system performs under a specific workload. Great. All right. I think we are good to go ahead to move ahead. Okay. All right. So this was about the basic concepts of manual software testing. Okay. So as mentioned at the start, I said that I'll be talking about the performance testing as well. So I'll quickly go through it on a very high level. Okay. So when we talk about the performance testing, right, there are different types of performance testing that can be done on an application. So one is load testing. Okay. Which is very commonly done when we do the performance testing project. So load testing is the most common one. And then we have stress testing, and then we have endurance testing. And then the fourth one that is most another thing that we do is spike testing. Okay. So spike testing is something which is done for like if we are anticipating, right, if there is a spike in the access of the application on a specific day or a specific time in a day, then we do that type of testing. Okay, I'll talk about that in the upcoming slides. But let's get started with the load testing. Okay, so what is the definition of load testing? So load testing measures system performance as the workload increases. Okay, so that workload could mean concurrent users or transaction. I'll repeat it again. Load test measures system performance as the workload increases, and that workload could mean concurrent users or transactions. Okay. The workload used for load testing falls within the parameters of normal working conditions. All right. So let's take an example of Netflix. Okay. So Netflix has got a user base. Okay, and let's assume that in a 1 hour window. Okay, so Netflix sees that uh, 1 million users access its platform. Okay, so 1 million user on an in a 1 hour period usually access the platform. Okay, on a daily basis. So that is the normal working condition for the Netflix app. Every hour they'll see like around 1 million user accessing their application. So that is the normal working condition. Okay, so when we do the load test, right, we test the application for performance under that normal working condition parameter. Okay, when we do the load testing of the Netflix, we'll make sure that we test the application with 1 million user, which is a normal working condition, and see how the application is responding, how the APIs are responding, how the different modules within the application are responding when we have 1 million user accessing the application at the same time. Okay, so that's the load testing. And again, it's if you see this graph, right, if at the bottom left, it is the start of the test. So this y axis is the timeline. Okay, the time frame, and the this y axis is the number of users. Okay, and this y axis is the time frame. It starts from 0th second, and then on the right we have like up to 2 minutes 40 seconds. Okay, so when we do the load testing, what we do is we start with the user like 0 users. Okay, and we gradually increase the number of users to the maximum limit. So in case of this graph, right, it says 500 users. Okay, for Netflix it will be like 1 million user. Okay, so will gradually increase from 0 to 1 million. Okay, in case of Netflix, and then we keep it constant, the number of users for 1 hour. Okay, and then at the end of 1 hour, we'll gradually reduce the number of users from 1 million to 0 again. Okay, and then what happens, right, during the execution, what we'll do, we'll monitor the server. Okay, just to make sure that the server is working fine. We'll monitor the response time of different modules as well, just to make sure that it is as expected. We do not want any kind of slowness, right? End user should not face any kind of slowness or loading issue when they stream the video. Okay, so that all those things will monitor as part of the load test during the execution. So that is what the load test is about. Okay, I'll repeat it again. Load test measures system performance. Okay, uh, as workload increases, So from 0 to this one. And again, if you see, the workload used for load testing falls within the parameter of normal working conditions. So that is the main like differentiation factor of load testing and other testing. Okay, so load testing will when we do the load testing, we'll test it under the normal working conditions. Okay, what exactly we are expecting. So that's the only thing that we'll test it with. Okay, so that's the load testing. And I'll move on to the next type of testing, which is stress testing. Okay, so stress testing, as the name says, is the testing of the application by putting stress to the system. Okay, so in that case, in when you see the definition, stress testing measures system performance outside of the parameters of normal working condition. Okay, the software is given more users compared to normal working condition. So in case of Netflix, right, we have normal working condition is 1 million users within a 1 hour period. Okay, that is the normal working condition. But let's say if I want to do a stress test on Netflix application, what I will do is, instead of 1 million users, okay, accessing the application, I'll put a load of 5 million users in a 1 hour period. Here, when I put a load of 5 million user, right, I'm actually putting stress onto the application. Okay, I'm putting more number of user than expected. I'm putting more stress to the application, and that is the reason why it is called stress testing. And again, the like expectation is same. Okay, as part of test stress testing, what we are doing is we are increasing the number of users. We are adding, we are testing the application outside of the parameter or normal working condition. But the thing is, we are checking the same thing. We are checking how exactly the application is responding, how exactly the API is responding for the higher load, how exactly the modules are responding, how exactly the server is responding. We'll check that as part of the stress testing. Okay, the next one is regarding the endurance testing. So endurance testing is similar to load testing. Okay, but what we do, right, as part of the endurance test, we test the application for the normal workload. Okay, but we increase the number of increase the time. Okay, so let's say the load testing was done with 500 users for 1 hour. Okay, but when we do the endurance testing, we'll use the same user load. Okay, 500 user, but we'll stretch it to, let's say, 10-hour period or 8-hour period. Okay, for a elongated period of time. So the definition says endurance testing is an evaluation of how software performs with a normal workload over an extended period of time. Okay, so we'll make sure we run the test over 7 to 8 or 10 hours, okay, with the normal workload condition, and see how the application is responding. So the main goal, right, of this endurance testing is to check the response, okay, performance of the application, plus plus to check the system for any memory leaks. Okay, if there is any kind of leak in the memory, we'll check that as part of this endurance performance testing. Okay, and when we take an example of Netflix, right, in that case, what will happen, we'll start with 0 users. Okay, we'll increase it to 1 million user, which is the normal workload. And then instead of running the test for 1 hour, we'll test it for 10 hours. Okay, and then I'll slowly ramp down from 1 million to 0 users. Okay, so that's the endurance test. And the next one is spike testing. So again, taking an example of Netflix, right? Let's say Netflix is planning to release a movie on a specific day on Sunday, maybe at 10 a.m. They are planning to release a popular movie. Okay, so Netflix is anticipating that there will be 2 million users on so and so day. Okay, on Sunday at 10 a.m. there will be 2 million users accessing the application rather than just 1 million user using the application. Okay, so they are anticipating a spike in the user access. In that case, right, to test those scenarios, we can use the approach of spike testing. Okay, so what happens, right, in spike testing, workload is quickly increased and repeatedly. Okay, it is a combination of load test and stress test. Okay, so what happens is, for Netflix, it will start with 0. Okay, and then it will gradually increase the number of user to 1 million. Okay, and it will be 1 million for certain amount of time, and suddenly we'll add a spike of, let's say, 1 million more users. Okay, and then we'll reduce the number of user to, let's say, 1 million again. Okay, from 2 million to 1 million. and then for certain amount of time we'll have like 1 million number of users accessing the application, and then again there is a certain number of spike. We'll add a user suddenly and then reduce the number of users, and then we'll ramp it down to zero. Okay, so that is the spike testing. Here what we'll do, right, when there is a sudden spike, we'll quickly monitor. We'll monitor the application, we'll monitor the server, we'll monitor the API. We'll see that how exactly the streaming is happening, if there is any kind of slowness or any kind of delay in the streaming, and all this stuff we'll check as part of this spike testing. And as I mentioned earlier, spike testing is a combination of load test and stress test. Okay, so that is about this spike testing. Okay, yeah. I think, yeah, as part of the bonus, we'll have like we have scalability testing. So I won't talk much in detail because these are like a very easy to understand concepts. So scalability testing is used to determine if a software is effectively handling increasing workload or changing the resource server. So what we do, right, as part of this scalability testing, and during the testing, during the load testing, we will reduce the number of servers, like number of resources, like number of servers, or we'll increase the CPU of the server, we'll increase the memory of the server, or we'll reduce the memory of the server. So we change those parameters during the runtime to see how exactly the application is performing. Okay, so that is scalability testing, and then we have volume testing, which determines how effectively software performs with large amount of data. So as part of volume testing, what we do is we increase the volume of data in the database and do the load testing of the application to see how the system is responding to the large amount of data. So, uh, so basically, this is done because if, let's say, application user base increases, right, suddenly we need to make sure that the application is able to handle the huge database with the increased number of users. That is the reason why we do the volume testing. Okay. All right. So this is what we have for day one. Okay. So, and again, I have a poll, one more poll for you. I would like you to rate this training call for today. Okay. Please do that before you log off. So this is what we covered today. Okay, so tomorrow we'll go in depth. Okay, the theoretical knowledge that you learned, right? That is great. You need to make sure like you understand these concepts. And what I would recommend, right? Go through the recording that I'll be sharing today after this call. Go through it, go through the training material as well. I'll be sharing this document, this PPT with you so that you can go through it. You can revise the concept, and then tomorrow we'll do hands-on. Tomorrow will be the hands-on session where we'll create different artifacts for the software testing, like the scenario test cases. We'll see how to execute the test case, and we'll generate the defect report as well. And yeah, that's what we are going to cover for tomorrow. Yeah, that is it. And if you have any question, right, feel free to post it on the WhatsApp group. Okay, I'm assuming you have been added to the group. And again, if you have not been added to the group, drop me an email. Okay, and again, the registration email that you guys have must have received, right? It also has got the link to the WhatsApp group, and make sure that you get yourself added to the group. And if you have any question, post it on the group or join the Facebook group and post it there. It will be very helpful. Like if you post it on the Facebook group, it will be very easy to discuss there. And again, for the other folks as well, right? There are other team members in the other members in the group as well, and it will be easy for them to understand. And if they have answers to that question, then they can respond to your query as well. Okay. Yeah, that is it about day one. We'll see, like, we'll meet tomorrow again at the same time, and then we'll talk more about the hands-on part for software testing. Okay. All right then. Thanks everyone for taking your time, and see you guys tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. All right. Thank you. Hello everyone. Good morning. Can you let me know in the Q&A section if you are able to hear me, if you are able to hear my voice? Can you let me know? Can you please type yes? Great. Okay. I can see many people replying. All right. Okay, then let's get started. Okay. So today is the day two of the 3-day challenge. Okay. And as part of day two, right, there are many important things that we are going to cover as part of day two. And I'll be quickly talking about what exactly we are going to cover for today. Okay, so to get started, and just to recap, right, yesterday we went through different concepts of software testing. We understood the different terminologies that we have as part of software testing, and then again, the different levels of software testing, and then we understood the types of software testing. Okay, and after that, we had a bonus section as well, wherein we got like understanding about basics of performance testing, and we went through different types of performance testing, that is load testing, stress testing, endurance, spike, scalability, and then there was one more that is called the volume testing. So we went through these different types of performance testing, understood what exactly these testing and these type of testing, what exactly it does and when it is used. Okay, so we went through all those things yesterday. And today, right, what we'll be doing is we'll be talking majorly about the hands-on section. Okay, just a second. Yeah. So we'll talk majorly about the hands-on part today, related to the software testing, wherein what we'll do, we'll follow a process. Okay, we'll go through the requirement document to understand like how exactly requirement document looks like. And once we understand the requirement document, right, we'll get started with creation of different artifacts related to the software testing. When I say artifacts, right, so artifacts are basically the deliverables of the software testing activity. So different phases of software testing, right, has got different types of deliverables that needs to be created. Okay, so we'll talk about all those things. And as part of the deliverables, as part of the artifact, we'll get started with creating the test scenario. We'll go through the templates. We'll understand what are the different components of the test scenario. Similarly, we'll understand the test cases as well, and how exactly the execution is done, and defect reporting and execution summary. So this is what we are going to cover today. And then at the end of the session, right, I'll be sharing the template with you so that you can download it and you can plug and play and simply download it and use it as part of your project. Okay, so that's something that I'll give it to you. And in addition to that, I'll be giving you an assignment as well. Okay, so I'll talk about it at the end, but I want you all guys to like work on the assignment and make sure that you share that on the FB group as well, so that I can review your assignment and can give feedback to you. Okay, so that's what we are going to do as part of day two today. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing what we are going to do is we'll be talking about the software testing artifacts. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, artifacts are the documents or the deliverables for the software testing activity. Okay, so when we do the software testing activity, right, each phase has got certain documents that needs to be created and delivered to the client. Okay, so that's what we are going to talk about today. So if you see on the right hand side, right, I have mentioned the software testing life cycle and the different phases involved in the software testing life cycle. And this is the thing that we discussed yesterday. We went into detail. We understood each and every phases of the software testing in detail yesterday. So today we'll talk about the deliverables for each one of them, artifacts related to each one of them. Okay. So the first thing is regarding the requirement analysis. So the first phase that we have, that requirement analysis, as I explained yesterday. So requirement analysis talks about the analysis of the requirement document, wherein we go through the requirement, understand the requirement, raise the query in case we have any question. So that's something that we do as part of the requirement analysis. And if you see the first one, the first artifact is requirement document. Okay, so that document, right, requirement document is part of requirement analysis. Okay, so it has to be there when we do the requirement analysis, because without the requirement document we won't be able to proceed ahead with the requirement analysis phase. Okay, and then the second phase is test planning. So test planning talks about creating a plan for the entire testing. So whatever scope of the project is, right, like if I want to test a specific application, I'll have to make sure that before getting started with creating test scenario, test cases, and execution, I'll have to create a plan so that I know what exactly needs to be done, what are the different environments and all this stuff. I'll talk more about it in the next slide. But test planning is very important, and as part of the test planning, right, there are two documents that needs to be come up. Okay, so there are two deliverables as part of test planning. One is test strategy and test plan. Okay, test strategy is a document which is a very high level document which talks about the strategy that will be used to do the testing. Strategy, when I say, like, that document will consist of what is the objective of the testing, what application we need to test, and then what are the different types of testing that needs to be performed. Whether we need to do the performance testing, whether we need to do the automation testing or manual testing, and again in the manual testing, are you required to do the integration testing or system testing, regression testing, all those things, right? Different types of testing that we need to perform. All those things will be a part of the test strategy. Okay. And then test plan, as the name says, it consists of the plan. Again, it is, so test plan is a detailed level document. So test strategy is on a very high level. Test plan is a detailed level document. It consists of each and everything, like the schedule, what exactly is the schedule that needs to be followed for testing, when is the start date, when is the end date, and then what is the environment that we need to test in, and what test data is needed, what are the different modules that we need to test as part of this testing. So everything, right, related to planning of the testing, everything will go inside the test plan document. And again, there are a few other things like risk identification, contingency, and mitigation plan as well. So that will go as part of the test plan. Okay, so those risk identification, contingency, and mitigation, that comes like that is most like advanced software testing concept. So I won't go in depth in this specific 3-day challenge because of the time limitation. But just remember that these are the things that are part of the test plan. Okay. So once that is done, once the test planning phase is done, the next phase is test case development. Okay. So as part of test case development, okay, there are like a couple of artifacts or a couple of deliverables. One is like test scenario document, which I'll be talking about it. So it consists of list of scenarios that we need to test. And again, test scenarios are very high level scenarios. And then we have test cases, which are like level scenarios. So test cases comes from test scenario, and test cases consist of like how exactly we need to test. It consists of steps that needs to be followed in order to do the testing. But test scenario does not consist of that. It is a high level one statement saying that this is what we need to test, but test cases says this is what we need to test and how we need to test. It answers both of these questions. Okay. Then we have test data as well. But again, test data comes as part of test environment setup phase. So once we are done with the test case development, okay. So the next step is to make sure we set up the environment for testing. So in order to do that, right, we need to make sure that we have the appropriate test data available in the environment so that we can do the testing. Because when we do testing, right, we need some input data, and without that, we won't be able to proceed ahead with it. So test data, setting up test data will help us do that. So that is one of the deliverable as part of test environment setup. And then there are a couple of more, like setting up actual environment, uh, whether we need to run it on the QA environment or some development environment, something like that, right? So based on that, we'll have to make sure that we set up this environment prior to execution. And again, if there is any kind of integration, right, that we need to test, let's say this, as per the plan, we need to do end-to-end testing. Okay. So in that case, what happens, right? We'll have to make sure that the third-party application, the integrated application, right? If there is a integration of a third-party application with the application that needs to be tested, then we'll have to make sure that we do that integration. We set up that integration as well, so that we can do the testing. So all these things, right, comes under part of test environment setup. And then once everything is done, we'll do the test execution. And as part of the test execution, there are two deliverables. One is test result. Okay, we'll document the execution result. And then the second thing is defect reports. In case during the execution, right, we find a defect, then we will have to make sure that, you know, we document that report, document that defect, so that we can send it back to the developer to get it fixed. So I'll be talking about that as well, the template and the what are components we need to include as part of the defect report. I'll talk about it. And once everything is done, once the execution is done, okay, so we have a test closure phase. Okay. And as part of test closure phase, right, the important deliverable is test summary report. So test summary report, as the name says, it is a summary of the entire execution that we did, which includes like what all things we executed as part of this execution, a number of test cases passed, failed, percentage of test cases failed, and all those stuff, right? Number of defects raised and the details of the defects, everything. Along with, like, at the end, we'll be having a conclusion section as well, wherein we say like the overall testing was a pass or fail depending on the defects, right? If defect if the uh, testing during the testing we encountered, like we found many critical defects and none of them got fixed, then we can say that the defects are still open and it is not good to release to the production. So we can say in the conclusion that we the testing team uh, does not want the product to be released, and so with so and so reason. So all those things, right, needs to be included as part of the test summary report. Okay. So yeah, if you guys have any question, I'll give you 1 minute. Can you please post it on the Q&A section? And if you don't have any question, then please reply no on the chat. Can you please do that? I'll give you like a minute. Okay. Nasser is saying no. Thanks, Nasir, for replying. Okay. So if you guys are like, thanks, Mayur. All right. So I'm assuming like you guys are able to understand it. And again, what I want, right, in case you feel like something is not clear, okay, if you think that you are not able to understand any specific concept, make sure you ask in the Q&A chat window, okay, so that I get to know and I can clarify it right away. Okay, so I'm constantly keeping an eye on the chat window. So make sure you do that and let me know. All right, so let's move ahead. Okay, so I spoke about this one, requirement document. What exactly the requirement document is? It talks about the functionalities, constraints, specification expected from a system or product in a detailed and structured manner. Okay, so I'll quickly show you one sample document of the software requirement. Okay, all right. So this is a sample document. Okay, so this is how the requirement document looks like. Okay, so we have the name of the application. So the name of the application is Marvel Electronics and Home Entertainment. And then it talks about, so what exactly it is a requirement document. That's what it is stated here. And then if you scroll right, there's a revision history, and then comes the table of content, and then we have actual requirement specifications. Okay, so this is how the requirement document looks like. So we have an introduction. It talks about what exactly this application is about. Okay, and then the purpose of this document. So this is a common template. Okay, so mostly all the companies, right, they use a similar template. The look and feel will be different, but the main idea behind creating a requirement document is to document information about the application, what is the purpose of the document, scope of the project, right? All those things will be documented as part of the requirement along with the functionality. So what exactly the functionalities are of the application, and details of those functionalities, and in case there is any kind of integration, right, with the third party, all those things will be documented here in the requirement document. Okay, so the requirement document might look exactly same for different projects, but the content will be more or less similar. Okay, all right. So the purpose of the document, and then we have the scope. Okay, so if you see here, it has mentioned that the scope pertains to the Easter product feature for making this application project live. Okay, so this document consists of the project feature information. Okay, and it focuses on the company stakeholders and all the stuff about the scope. And if you scroll, the overview of the project, and then so what exactly this document is about. So if you see, it mentions clearly this document provides general description including characteristics of the user of this project, the product hardware that is used that is going to be used, the functional and data requirement of the product. Okay, and then general description of the product is discussed in section so and so. Data requirement, constraint, and assumption are made while designing the e-store. All those things will be documented here as part of this requirement specification document. Okay, and overall description. And here comes the specific requirement. Okay, the functionality requirement. So this specific section 3, and under 3 we have 3.4, which says which talks about the functionality. Okay, and under that we have subsections for different features. Okay, so one is like a cell configured feature, and then comprehensive product detail. So this specific document, right, requirement 3.4.2 is the requirement number, which talks about provide comprehensive product detail. The system shall display detailed information of the selected product. So that is one of the requirements. So when the user clicks selects a product, right, the system should display detailed information of the selected product. So that is one requirement. Okay. Then the second requirement 3.4.2.2 is the system shall provide browsing options to see product details. So system should have the browsing option as well. They should have an option to go through different products to view the product details. So that is another requirement. And if you scroll down, there is one more requirement 3.4.2, which is related to provide search facility. So if you see here the first requirement, the system shall enable user to enter the search text on the screen. So that requirement says that the product should have a search box, okay, search text box, and the user should be able to enter the search text in that text box. Okay, so that is one requirement. And then the second requirement says that the system shall enable user to select multiple options on the screen to search. Okay, so there should be multiple options on the screen, like advanced option or something like that for the user to search. Okay. And then one more requirement says that the system shall display all the matching products based on the search. So when the user clicks on, enters the text right in the search text box and clicks on search, all the matching products right based on the search, the text that user has entered, the system should display all those matching product based on the search. And then there is another requirement which says that system shall display only 10 matching results. So when the user clicks on search, only 10 matching results should be displayed. And then the next requirement says that there should be a navigation option between the search results. So if there are more than 10 search results, then the system should be, then the user should be provided with the option for navigation from one page to another. Okay, so that's what this requirement talks about. So there are many different requirements for different feature modules that has been documented here. Won't go into detail for each and every module right now. But again, if you see there is a reusability requirement as well, accessibility requirement, reliability and availability requirement, making sure that the application is available like to the user. It should not go down. The server should not go down. The system should be up like 99.9999% should be available. And then there is a performance requirement as well. Okay, security requirement, data storage. So all these things, right? Different types of requirement will be documented as part of the requirement document. Okay, so that is about the requirement document. Okay, so I'll move on to the next one. Okay, I hope it is clear how exactly requirement document looks like and what all things are included as part of the requirement document. Okay, so the next thing that we'll be talking about is test scenario. So what exactly is test scenario? A test scenario, as per the definition, a test scenario focuses on what to test. Okay, it is a very high level workflow that needs to be tested. Okay, so I'll quickly go through that document. So I'll open an example for the test scenario. We'll get a little better understanding what exactly it looks like. Okay, so it just talks about what exactly we need to test this test scenario document. Okay, so here is the document. Okay, so there is a test scenario that I have opened right now. Okay, so I'll try to increase the size of this document so that it is readable. Just a second. Okay, I'm not able to do that. I'll increase the font size. Yes. So can you let me know if you are able to read it, the text? Can you reply yes if you are able to read the text, or do you want me to increase the font? Okay, Prasad is saying yes, we can. Okay. If you guys are not able to read it right, just let me know. I'll increase the font size. All right, so I'll move ahead. Okay, Samir is saying little bit increase. All right, I'll do that. Okay. All right then. So this is the scenario document. Okay, so this is the template that is most commonly used in the company. Okay, when uh, as part of the Excel. So there are different tools that we can use, or we can use Excel spreadsheet as well for creating the requirement document, test case document, and this scenario. Okay, so right now what we'll be doing, right? So most of the tools are like license tools, so we won't go through those tools right now, but it's fairly easy to use. But the concept is same. So if you understand this right, how to use these test case, this spreadsheet. Uh, Excel spreadsheet, then using any tool should not be that difficult, because the only thing that you need to understand is understanding the basics. So if you understand the basic, if you get the good grip of basics right, then you can use any tools available in the market, because the fields, the approach, the concept is same. Just that instead of using Excel, you'll be using some online tool or a tool that can store all this information in the database. Okay, so that's the only difference. So it doesn't matter if you use the tool, if you use the tool for learning or not, but this is what the basics are. So the scenario document, okay, it consists of like these headers. One is module name. Okay, then there is a requirement ID. So every requirement, right, we has got the requirement ID. If you observe that in the requirement document, so there were requirement IDs for every requirement. So we need to make sure we include that in test scenario, and then we have test scenario ID. So that is something that we'll create. Okay, the ID is something that we'll assign, and while creating the scenario, and we'll have to make sure that the test scenario has got a unique ID. Each test scenario should have a unique ID. Okay, then comes the test scenario description, which is very high level description of what exactly we need to test. So if you remember, the definition says that test scenario talks about what to test. Okay, so that's what we are going to mention here. And then there is a comment section in case there is any specific clarification needed, right? Or if you want, if you have something questions, if you have a question regarding the requirement, uh, then you need to make sure you document it during the scenario creation, so that it is like documented, and you know that this is something that you need to ask in order to enhance your scenario. Okay, so that's the different fields, the headers option that we have. So let's see how exactly it looks like. So the first thing, right, what I'll be doing is, so this is for the requirement 3.4.4. Okay, so I'm not creating the requirement for all the, sorry, scenario for all the requirement, but this one is for section 3.4.4, which is provide search facility. Okay, so this first scenario is for the first requirement, which says that enable user to search the and search text, to enter the search text on the screen. Okay, so here as part of this one, this requirement, right, we'll have to make sure that uh, user can enter the search text. Okay, enter the text in the search text. That is something that we need to test, because the requirement says system shall enable user to enter the search text on the screen. So this is what we need to test as part of the first requirement. Okay, so what I have done, right? So module name is search facility. I have added it here. Requirement ID at 3.4.4. Okay, which is this one. So this is the requirement ID that I documented here. Now test scenario ID, right? That is something that you can create depending on how exactly you want. Okay, so it's totally depends on you and your team. Okay, so for now, right, what I have created, this is the format that I have followed. TS is test scenario, abbreviation for test scenario, TS01, okay, underscore the name of the application, which is eStore, underscore the module name. Okay, so that is the format that I have followed. You can follow something else as well, like TS01 underscore just the module name, or TS underscore just the application name. But if you add some more detail, right, while looking at the test scenario, it will be easy for you to understand like what exactly this is about. Is it related to search facility, or is it related to the customer profile or product details or all those things, right? So you get to know just looking at the scenario ID. And that is the reason why it is important to like elaborate more and add more details here. Okay. So for now, like this is the format that I have followed. So TS01, the next scenario is TS02, TS03, TS04, and that is the sequence that I am following add for the test scenario ID. Okay. Now, if you see test scenario description, based on this example, okay, the first requirement says we should check whether the user is able to enter the text in the search text box. Okay, so that's what exactly I have written here. Verify that the user is able to enter search text on the screen. Okay, so that is first requirement, and this is first scenario. Then the second requirement says that the system shall enable user to enter multiple option on the screen to search. So here what I need to test is whether I need to test whether user is able to select multiple options or not. That is the main goal of this thing to test. Okay. So if the user is able to select that multiple option, that means this requirement is satisfied. Okay, so that is what exactly I have written here. Verify that the user is able to select multiple options on the screen to search. Okay, then yeah. So now, so these two things, right, were based on the specific requirement one on one. Okay, so the first scenario was related to this one. The second scenario is related to the second requirement point. Okay, but we should not limit these scenarios just based on the functionality that was written in the requirement document. Okay, we need to think out of the box. We need to think additional scenarios as well. Okay, not just limited to the requirement. Okay, so here is another scenario that I have come with. Okay, so for this first part, right, entering the search text, okay, text in the search text box. So I have come up with another scenario, okay, whether the user will be unable to enter special character or not. So ideally, when we do any kind of search, right, it should not allow a special character, okay, in the search text box for the product. So that is what I'm searching here. I'm testing here as part of the scenario. So it says that verify that user is unable to enter special character in the search box. Okay, so that is something that I have come up with additional scenario, not specific to the requirement, but again, as I mentioned earlier, software testing is more like analytical thing wherein you need to think on different aspects of the software, different things. You'll have to think from the user perspective, like what he or she might do in the application, and we'll have to make sure that the things that are not right, not as per the requirement, and not something that is like the valid options. So all those things should be tested as part of the testing process. Okay, so that is one. This is one more example, and that shows that we need to test something else other than what is documented in the requirement as well. Okay, and then there can be many things, like you can think about the different types of software testing, right? So when we can create scenarios like for performance as well. Thinking about the performance, like if let's say three different users tries to enter the search in the enter this search the text in the search box, they should be able to enter it. Okay, so that can be one scenario. Then we can talk about the compatibility testing as well. Like if it should work on the Chrome browser, and that's but particular user should be able to enter the text uh, in the Firefox browser as well, in the Safari browser as well, or on the Edge browser as well. So those different applications, those different browsers, right? We need to make sure that we test these specific features, certain important features on those different browsers as well. So that is again one thing that you need to consider. Okay, like compatibility. Then we can test, like there can be any other scenarios like integration or something like that, but it is not applicable to this specific functionality. But in case there is specific thing related to payment, right, let's say a user clicks on the purchase option and makes the payment, we'll have to test that the user purchase option, right, the payment details are available at the payment gateway as well. And the payment application, which is a third party application, we'll have to make sure that the application sends all the correct data and make and processes the payment. So again, that is something that we can check as part of the end-to-end integration testing. Okay, so these are just a little example, but again, the basic thing here is when we create test scenario, we should not limit our scenarios to the functional requirement document. We need to think out of the box, like how exactly the user might be impacted if they do some like incorrect action on the UI. Okay, so we need to make sure we test those features as well. Okay. All right. So there is one more requirement. Okay. I have created for 3.4.5 scenario created for 3.4.5. So this is the requirement, maintain customer profile. Okay. So the first requirement says system shall allow user to create profile and set his credential. Okay. So that first requirement, I'm checking that verify that user is able to create a profile and set the credential. I have a clarifying question here. I need to understand like what is the password length limit and complexity that needs to be used for setting up the credential. So that is a question that I'll ask to the product owner. Okay, and based on that, right, I might come up with an additional scenario. If product owner says that the password length should not be more than 10 characters. Okay, and should be like not be less than 5 characters. So I can create another scenario which says that verify that the credentials allowed should not be less than 5 characters and should not be more than 10 characters. That is something additional scenario that I can come up with based on the clarification that I received. Okay. The second requirement again it says that verify that user is able to successfully log in on providing valid credential. Okay, it should be authenticated. The user should be authenticated to view the profile. So again, so that was one. But again, this is another which is not exactly directly related to the application. But I have written I wrote a scenario which says that user should not be allowed to log in with invalid username and password. Okay, so that is something that I have come up with while going through the requirements. So that's the reason why I documented it here as part of the scenario. So again, I'll repeat it again. The scenario should not be just about the requirement that you see in the requirement document. You have to make sure you think out of the box, come up with different scenarios that can break the application, that can break the system, and and test it. Write the scenario so that you can test it. Okay, so that is about the test. Sorry, that is about the test scenario document. Okay, so this is how the test scenario document looks like. If you have any question, okay, I'll give you 1 minute. Can you please post it on the Q&A chat so that I can answer it? And if you don't have any question, can you please reply no? All right. Okay, I see you guys don't have any question, and it's great, like you are able to understand it. And again, if you have any question, just let me know anytime. Don't wait for me to ask. Okay. All right. So I'll move on to the next one. So the next thing is regarding the test case. Okay. So what exactly is test case? So if you remember test scenario, as I mentioned earlier, test scenario focuses on what to test. Okay. But test case is something that focuses on what to test and how to test. Okay. So that's the main difference. Test scenario is a very high level. Test case is a detail level document. Okay. It contains the detailed information about what to test and how to test. So that's the main difference. Scenario, it is what to test, test cases, and what to test, and it gives us the steps on how to test. And the next line it says it consists of test steps, test outcome, test data, etc. It is an expanded form of test scenario. One test scenario can have more than one test cases. Okay. So again, I'll show you one example of test case. Okay. I'll increase the font size for this one. Okay, so this test case, right? Test case, whatever test case that we write should be related to the test scenario. So for each test scenario, there should be at least one test case. There can be more than one test case for one scenario, but at least minimum the rule here is one scenario should have at least one test case in the test case document. Okay, so these are the headers: test scenario ID, test case ID, module name, test case description, the step number, test step description, prerequisite. Okay, so prerequisite is something that we need to make sure that we have it in the application. We work on it before we execute the steps. Okay, for the test case. Then we have test data. What exactly data we need to use for the specific testing. Okay, for the specific test step, and what is the expected. So for each step, right, and there has to be expected outcome, what exactly we are expecting the application to behave. Okay, so that is one thing. And then we have the actuals as well, which I'll talk about it when we do the execution. Then status, pass and fail, name of the tester who tested it, and defect ID along with the commits. Okay, so this is the header. And then in the test scenario, right, So just a second. Okay. So this is the test scenario. Okay, so when we write a test case, right? So let's say I'm writing it for this first one. So we have the test scenario ID. Okay, so we need to make sure that the test scenario ID is documented here. So this scenario ID comes from this scenario document. Okay, so now I have one scenario ID here. Okay, and I know that this specific test case, okay, is related to this specific scenario. Okay, so that's how we can validate like the test scenario has got associated with the test case or not. Okay. Then the test case ID, similar to test scenario, we need to make sure that the test case ID is unique. Okay. And again, this is the format that I am following. One is like TC01, that is test case 01 underscore the scenario ID. This will make sure that the scenario, the test case that you are creating, right, has got a unique ID. Okay. Then comes the module name. It's a search facility, so this module name should match with this module name. Okay. Then we have test case description, which is basically the scenario description. Test case description exactly what the scenario says. Okay. So here we are testing whether the user is able to enter a search text on the screen or not. Okay. Now the important part, right? What exactly differentiates between test scenario and test case? So this the next thing that come right. These are related to the test case document. So one is test step. So if you remember, I mentioned the test case talks about what to test and how to test. Okay. So these previous sections, right? Previous fields, a scenario ID, module ID, description. It talks about what exactly we need to test. But this test step, right, it talks about how the testing has to be done, how we need to test it. So in order to answer that how, right, we have to differentiate it with, we have to separate that how into multiple steps. Okay, to make it more easy for it, to make it more easy for anyone to go through it and do the testing. Okay, so let's say you are writing a test case, but someone else is doing the testing. Okay, so if this how part is simple, right? If it is clear, then anyone can do the testing just looking at the test case document, and that should be the ideal goal of the document should be. And again, for you as well, right? As a tester, you will be considered a good tester if you write a test case that is very easy for anyone else to follow. Okay, so that's very important. Keep that in mind. And if you see how we need to do, we have these three steps here: step one, step two, step three. For this scenario, it is we just need three steps, but there might be scenario which has got 15, 20, 30 steps as well, depending on the complexity of the application. But for this one, we just need three steps on how to test. So the step one says load the eStore URL in the Firefox browser. Okay. Prerequisite is the application should be successfully set up. We need to make sure that the application is set up in the environment. Okay. And then we have test data to perform this specific step, right? This is the test data. So when we say, right, load the URL, so what URL we need to load? So it's qa.estore.com. Okay, so this is just a sample. It does not exist. Okay, I'm just created a data here. Okay, just for your information, in case you try to access it, right, it won't be accessible. So this specific test step will require this steps, this specific data. Now the expected, right, for this test step, let's say when I load the URL in the Firefox browser, what is expectation? Okay, what needs to happen? So that is what we need to mention in the expected column. So for this step, it says the eStore application should be successfully loaded. Okay, so that's what we are expecting. Then comes the step two. So once the step two is done, in order to validate this scenario, I need to make sure I log into the application as well using valid credential. And here is the test data. And expected is user should be able to log in without any issue. Okay. Then step three says click on search box and enter the search text. So this is exactly what we are testing here. Okay. So the requirement says verify that the scenario says verify that user is able to enter search text on the screen. So the third step is I'll enter search text on the screen. Okay, here is the test data. This is what I will enter. Okay, mobile. And what is expected, user should be able to enter the search text. So that is what this scenario is about. Okay, we are checking whether the user is able to enter search text or not. And that is what the expected should be. So expected is user should be able to enter the search text. Okay, so that is how the test case looks like. It has got like how to test. Okay, what to test and how to test. Similarly, I'll take one more example. Verify that user is able to select multiple options on the screen. Okay, so this is this second requirement. Again, this how to test. Step one, load the e-store URL in the Firefox browser. Step two is log into the store with a valid credential. User should be able to log in, which is the expected outcome. Step three says click on the search box and enter the search text. Expected is user should be able to enter the search text. Step four says click on advanced search link. Okay. You expected is user uh, should be able to select multiple options. Okay, there's a typo here. I'll update it. To select multiple options under the advanced search tab. Okay, then step 5 says select multiple options under the advanced search tab, and this is what exactly we are testing. Okay, user should be able to select multiple option. Okay, it has to be this thing. Okay, so the step 5 says user should be able to select multiple options on the screen. So this is exactly what we are testing as part of this scenario. Okay, so this is about the test case. Do you have any question on how exactly test case looks like and what is the purpose of the test case, or any other query related to the test case document? Can you reply no in case you don't have any question? Okay, I see like just a couple of folks are replying. Can everyone respond to my chat, to my request? That will help me better understand like if you are paying attention or not. Okay, great. Thanks, Natraj. Thanks, Sachin. Thanks, Prasad. All right. Okay, so let's move ahead. Okay, so this is about the test case. So next thing that we are going to talk is about the test execution. Okay, so what exactly is test execution? So test execution refers to a process. So test execution is a process of running the actual test case against the software or system under test. So what we'll be doing, right? We'll be actually using the application and we'll be following the steps that are mentioned in the test case document, and we'll run those tests and see if so what is expected and what is actual, and we'll document the actual during the execution, what exactly is happening in the execution. And in case like we do not see any like the expected and actual, right, if there is a discrepancy, then we'll document that as well as part of the defect. Okay, so test execution is a process of running the actual test case against the software. Okay, it involves validation, as I mentioned, validation of expected outcome against the actual result to identify discrepancies or defects. Okay, so here is another example of test case execution. Okay, uh, I have created one for Gmail. So I'll increase the font size here. Okay, so this is a scenario, okay, for Gmail to verify whether that user is able to log into the Gmail or not. And these are the test steps. Okay, so one is load the URL. Okay, so when I do the actual testing, right? So if you see here, there is a test data mentioned here, gmail.com. Okay, so when I do the actual testing, what I'll be doing is step one is saying load the URL in the Chrome browser. Okay, so what I'll do, so right now I'm using Firefox, but you'll have to like go to the Chrome browser. You'll have to go to the browser and type gmail.com and press enter. Okay, so that's the step one. Okay, right now here, if you see, it is not going to ask me for the enter the username and password because I'm already logged in. But when you create a fresh, like go to the browser that is no, or if the application is not already logged in, then you should be able to see the username password. So depending on this, right, enter the username. You have to make sure you enter the username. This is the username that you need to enter. Aptitudes, then password, enter password. User should be able to enter password if it is fine, right? So let's go step by step. Okay, so the first one says load the URL. The Gmail login page should be displayed on the screen. Okay, if it happens, right, what I'll do, I'll mention the actual, the Gmail login page is displayed on the screen. That is actually what happened. And then the test status, right, pass or fail, the step status. If it is working, if expected is actual and actuals are exactly same, then I'll mention that I'll update this to pass. Okay, now then I'll go to second step, enter the username. I'll type in the username and this one aptitudes. Okay, and the expected is user should be able to enter the username. So when I typed in, I was able to enter the username. In that case, what I'll do, in actual, I'll mention that user is able to enter the username. Okay, again, the expected and actual both are same, so I'll update it to pass. Then it says enter password. Okay, I'll type in the password. Okay, in the on the browser, in that application UI. Okay, and then expected is user should be able to enter the password. Yes, I was able to enter the password, so I'll update this field. I'll type user is able to enter the password, and I'll change this. I'll update it to pass. Okay, then comes the click on login button. Step 4 says click on login button, so I'll actually click on the login button. Okay, and then the expected says login button should be enabled and user should be able to click on the button. Yeah. Okay, that is the expected. And I see that login button is enabled and I was able to click on it. So I'll document the actuals saying that login button is enabled and a user is able to click. So, and I'll update the status as pass. And then the steps is that verify that user is successfully logged in. Okay. And the expected is home page with email inbox should be displayed. Okay. This is how like home page with the email inbox should be displayed, and it is true. Okay, so add the actuals here. Okay, I'll say that home page is displayed after successful login. Okay, and I'll update this step as pass, and then verify that logged in username should be displayed on the top right corner. Okay, so this is the logged in username. It is displayed on the top right corner. Correct. So so expected is it should be displayed on the top right corner, and actual is username is displayed on the top right corner of the page, and I'll make it as pass. So let's say that the the name is not displayed here on the top right corner. Then in that case there is a discrepancy. I'll update it as fail, and I'll say that username is not displayed on the top right corner of the page, and I'll mark it as fail. Okay. So in case, right, uh, this step fails, then we can say that the entire test case failed. So if if even one of the step is failed, right, we'll have to say that the entire test case got failed. Okay, the test case is passed only when all the steps status is passed. Okay, so in this case, if everything is working fine, okay, then we can say that this specific test is passed, and the name of the tester we need to document it. So right now I am testing it, so that's my name in the tester. And then in case there is any kind of issue, right, in case let's say username is different, okay, it's not displayed, then we'll have to create a defect that I'll talk about, like how to create a defect. We'll create a defect and document the defect ID here so that we can trace it back to the defect ID. Okay, and so right now everything is working fine, so there is no defect needed. But if something is failing, then we'll have to make sure we create a defect and add a defect ID here. Okay, so that's about the test case. And again, I'll wait for 1 more minute. If you guys have any question, do let me know. Okay, I'm looking in the Q&A chat window, so do let me know if you have any question. Okay, great. All right, I think you guys are pretty much clear on the concepts of like test case and then the scenario as well. There are no questions from you guys. But again, if you have any question, please feel to interrupt me, ask on the chat. Okay, so this is about the test case execution part. Okay, and now let's talk about the uh, next one, which is about the defect. Okay, just a second. Okay. Let's talk about the test defect. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, right, what is a defect? A defect is a deviation, okay, that we see from the expected and actual. So if the expected is not matching the actual, then that is a deviation in the requirement. Okay, and that is called a defect. If the expected is not matching the actual, okay, if the expected is not matching the actual, then it is called a defect. So as per the definition, it says that a defect report, often referred to as a bug report or issue report. We can a defect, we can call it as a bug or issue, but most commonly, right, but most commonly uh, in industry, we use the term defect or bug. Okay, we don't use issue. but it can be termed as issue report as well. Okay, we call it as defect and bug, which is most common terminology that is used in the IT industry. Okay, so it is a defect. A defect report, often referred to as a bug report or issue report, is a document. Okay, that captures details about issue in an application during testing. Okay, it talks about what exactly the issue is. Okay, I'll quickly show you how the defect report looks like. Okay, so this is the Gmail defect report that I have created. Okay, so it's very simple. This document, right? It is a defect document. It has got a list of defects that we identified during the testing process. Okay. So the first thing is defect ID. We have a defect ID. If you remember in the test case, I briefly spoke about the defect ID. It is a unique ID, okay, for a defect. And this defect ID goes to the test case execution sheet. Okay. So that we can have that mapping. If we are saying the test case is failed, it is mandatory to have a defect so that it can be tracked. If test case is failing, it is mandatory to have a defect. That's the rule. Okay, and defect ID should be unique ID, test case ID. If I'm raising a defect for a specific test case, I need to make sure that I add a test case ID here. Okay, it should be same as that of the ID in the test case document. Okay, then the module ID, again the same thing, login module or search facility module, whatever module that we have written the test case for. Then the summary. Summary is very high level information in one line. Okay, what this defect is about. Okay, so right now I have created one defect wherein user is able to log in with the invalid credentials. Even if the credentials are not valid, the system is allowing the user to log in. Okay, so that is the defect. So I know on a very high level, I have added a one liner saying that user is unable to log in with invalid credential. And looking at the summary, right, user should the developer or whoever looks into the defect, that person should be able to understand what this defect is about. They need not go into detail on the steps to reproducing all this stuff, but looking at the summary, they should get a very high level information what this defect is about. Okay, then we have steps to reproduce. So these are the steps that is needed that anyone needs to follow in case they want to reproduce that defect on their machine. Okay, so let's say you are doing a testing, you find a defect, okay, and you create a defect and assign it to a developer. Now developer needs to understand how exactly he needs to reproduce a defect so that he can understand the defect and get it and fix it. Okay. So this step to reproduce whatever you mentioned, right? Developer will follow exactly same steps. Okay, like login, enter a valid, so enter the valid or an invalid password, enter valid username and invalid password, and there is a test data what the developer needs to use in order to reproduce the defect. Okay, and then the third steps is click on the login button. So if I follow these steps right, I should be able to reproduce that defect on my machine. Okay, so that's what this specific field talks about, steps to reproduce. It consists of exactly same steps that anyone needs to follow if they want to reproduce defect. And test data is specific to this defect. Whatever test data that you used right during the testing, which caused a defect, we need to document here. And then again for the defect, right? When this thing is done, okay. So ideally, what should be the expected and actual? So expected should be user should not be able to log into the Gmail with the invalid credentials. So that is what the expected is. But what exactly is happening is user is able to log in with the invalid password and error message is not displayed on the screen. So that is the actual, right, which is happening. So we need to document that as well, expected and actual. And the reason why we want to document this, right? So once the defect gets fixed, it will be sent back to the tester for retesting the defect once the defect is fixed. Okay, so it's not necessary that the defect will come to you as a tester for the retesting. Someone else might also get the defect back for retesting. Okay, someone else from the testing team. So in that case, it is very important to make sure what is expected and actual, so that the one who tests the defect, right, once it is back after the fix, that person should be able to understand what is expected and what is actual, and on what basis he should say that the defect is fixed or not. Okay, so that's very important to include expected and actual. And then the environment, which environment you tested on. Okay, then severity and priority. Okay, I'll quickly talk about these terms. So severity defines the impact of the defect on the application, and priority talks about how urgent it is to fix the defect. Okay, so let's say this one, right, this example, user is able to log in using invalid credential. So the severity is very high because it has got a impact, huge impact on the application. Okay, because anyone will be able to access the application without valid credential. Okay, that's the reason the impact is very high. It can cause a lot of issue. Okay, anyone will be able to access the data, anyone else's data, anyone else's email. Okay, so that's the reason why severity is high, and priority is urgency. Okay, so when I talk about the priority of this issue, right, again, this specific issue is very urgent to fix because you do not want this product to release with this specific defect, because anyone can be able to access their data, right? Anyone else's data. So it's very urgent to get it fixed as early as possible before the release. And that is the reason why we have set the priority as low. Okay, sorry, high. So this defect is of high priority, high severity and high priority. And severity, I repeat again, severity talks about the impact of the defect on the application, and priority talks about how urgent this defect needs to be fixed. Okay. Then we have another field, screenshot, yes or no. If we need to provide screenshot, right, it's always important. Like it's always beneficial if you provide a screenshot so that the developer can see what exactly the issue that you have observed. Okay, just writing it in a expected and actual might not provide all the information. Screenshot can give additional information to the developer, and even someone who test this defect, right, in the future, they will be able to see like what exactly was happening and what is happening now. Okay, and if you add a screenshot, make sure you update it as yes. And if the screenshot is added, then in the next tab, right, to the corresponding to the defect ID, create a new tab for that defect ID and add a screenshot here, so that anyone looking at the defect report, if they see that the defect has got a screenshot, they can see the defect ID, look at the tab here, go to the defect ID and see the screenshot. Okay, so that is another thing. And then there are other fields like status. Okay, so initially when the defect is created, the status is created, and then it moves on to like fixed. If the defect gets fixed, the developer will update the status as fixed. Once the defect is fixed, a QA person can test the defect, and if like it is working as expected, they can close the defect. Okay, so that's the status depending on the defect life cycle. We are not talking much in detail on the defect life cycle here because it will take another like a long 15 to 30-minute discussion or explanation exactly on how the life cycle should look like. So I won't cover it as part of this one. Okay, but again, if you have any question, let me know. We can have a discussion separately on the Facebook group. Okay, on the defect life cycle. And then assigned to, okay, so once the defect is created, it has to be assigned to a developer. So the to whom it is assigned, we'll have to make sure we add that name. Let's say it is assigned to a developer named Ashwin Kumar, right? So you can, when you create a defect, you know that this guy will be fixing the defect. Then you need to make sure you update this to his name. Okay, and once the developer fixes it, right, he can assign this defect to any of the tester who need to test this defect. Okay, at that time they'll update the name to someone else's name. Then created by field, who created the defect and when this defect was created. Okay, so this is about the defect. Okay, any question, anyone, before I move ahead? Who is giving priority and severity to the defect? So priority is something that is decided by the tester. Okay, based on your information, right? Because as a tester, right, tester is supposed to know in detail on the about the application. Okay, functionality of the application. Tester is supposed to know a lot about the functionality, and tester is a person who can decide like what is the impact of this specific defect on the application. And that is the reason why severity is decided by a tester. Okay, that one who tests the application, that's the person who decides the severity. And then the priority is something that is decided by the product owner. Okay, so or the business. So what happens, right, if you raise a defect and you set the severity as high and priority as high. Okay, but for you the priority can be high, but for the product, right, who wants to release this product, for that person this specific defect might not be of high priority. Okay, and so he or she can decide to change the priority to low. Okay, so severity is something that is decided by a QA, and no one can challenge that Okay, it's very difficult to challenge the severity. Let's say product comes and says, right, that this should be low severity. You can say that no, as per the QA, as per the testing, as per the testers, we think that this specific defect should be high priority, and you can say that no, we should not change this severity to a low or some other value, okay, if you think that it is high. But priority is something that can be overridden. If you think that it is of high priority, a product or business, a product team or business team, they can say that this is no, this can be of high priority. We want it to be of low priority, and they can change it to low. Okay, they have all the rights to update it. But severity is something that you can have a strong hold on. You can strongly stand up for the severity that you have set and say that this has to be a high severity, and then you can argue on that. You can have a discussion and make sure that it is as it is the one which you have selected. But priority is something that can be changed by the product or the business. Okay, all right. Okay, did that answer your question, Prasad? And sorry, Sachin, the font size was not big for you to understand, but I hope the concept got cleared. Okay, all right. So that was about the uh, defect. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing, summary report. Okay, so what is summary report? So summary report is a document that provides an overview of the testing activities performed during a specific testing phase, okay, or the entire testing process. So I'll again go to this thing, just a second. Yeah. So this is the Gmail summary report. Okay. This is again a sample report, and this is how the summary report looks like. Okay. It has got the name of the product, and then the product description, and then the project name, project description. So what exactly is summary report? If you remember, I mentioned about the test closure phase. So as part of the test closure, right, we need to send out the closure email, closure report to the stakeholders, okay, who have requested. Stakeholder, when I say stakeholder, is I'm talking about the client who has requested the testing. Okay, we need to send a report to the client or to the stakeholder saying that these are the things that we tested as part of this testing cycle, and the overall status, whether it's passed or failed, or what needs to be done, the conclusion based on the QA, right? All those things needs to be documented as part of the summary report, and this is what exactly it looks like. Okay, it has got the project name, project description, what exactly we're testing, execution start date, when the execution was started, when the execution uh, ended, okay, all those details, and overall status. So the status can be pass or fail. If there are like many critical defects open, we can say that the testing status is fail, because there are many open critical issues. Okay, and we are not good to release the product application to the productions. In that case, we can say that the overall status of the test is fail. Okay, application is not good to proceed ahead to the production to be released. Then the test cycle information, if we are doing integration testing, so this is something that the team decides what cycle name has to be given. Then the test environment, when the where exactly the test was executed, and then the execution status as well, like whether the, so what exactly, how many test cases were planned for execution, then what is the, how many test cases passed, how many test cases failed, what are the block test cases, how many test cases are still in progress which could not be executed due to time constraint or some other reason. So all these things will be documented here as part of the metrics, the count basically. Then in case there is any defect, right, will defect raised during the testing, we'll talk about those as well on a very high level, like how many defects were raised, okay, how many are open, how many are closed. Out of those open, how many are of high severity or low severity. So there is one defect which is open right now of low severity, and there was one defect that was raised having the high severity, and uh, it is in the closed status. Okay, so Sanket, yeah, I will share the notes with you. Okay, I'll share the notes once we are done with this session. Okay. Yeah, so that was about the defect. And then there are failed test case status. So if you see here in the status column, execution metrics, we see that there are two test cases which are failed. Okay, so if there are failed test cases, right, we need to mention about the detail about the failed test cases as well. So one test case, this one failed, and then there was another test case that got failed here. Okay, so I have mentioned the description, test case ID along with the test case description along with the defect ID. Okay, and then the block test case, if you see in the metrics, I have mentioned that there was one test case that was blocked. Okay, so if as a client, right, if I want to understand what test case was blocked and for what reason, I can have a look at it here. Like this specific test case was blocked, and this was we could not execute it due to lack of test data. Okay, and then there were no test cases in progress. There are zero test cases in progress. So this specific table is blank, not applicable. And then comes the overall conclusion. So if you see here, this is how the overall conclusion looks like. So all the test case that were planned were executed, okay, ensuring that 100% coverage. Uh, Ideally we should say 99% coverage on something like that, 99.5, because there is one blocked test case, right, which could not be executed. So I'll simply update it 99.5, something like that. Okay, so right now this is not the exact calculation, but ideally when we send out the report, we need to make sure we do the calculation exactly what it is and then document it. And then it says that during the execution, the team identified a high severity defect related to login model. The defect has been fixed and it is working as expected. So we are mentioning how exactly what exactly happened during the testing, if we identified any critical defect and what is the status of that. And it also talks about one open defect that has a low severity, and considering 99.5% execution coverage and a low severity open defect, the team concludes that the overall execution is passed. So let's say if there is a high severity, right? We can say that the overall status is failed because of the high severity defect. But here, since the severity is low, since the defect has got very less impact on the application, we are saying that the overall execution is passed. Okay. Then the next thing is about the sign off part. Okay, so overall, once the information is highlighted here, or once we add a summary description, then we can say that whether we are good to proceed with the production release or not. So in this case, right, the overall status is passed. So we can say that the QA team provides an official sign off to proceed with the production release. Okay. So that is about the test summary report. Okay, so I'll wait for just 1 minute for you guys to like if you think, right, if you guys have any specific question, then I'll wait for a minute. Just let me know. I'll check the status as well uh, in the Q&A chat. Can you reply? Can you let me know if you don't have any question? Can you reply no in the chat window? Okay. Prasad is saying no. Sachin is saying no. Someone is saying no. Great. Mayur is saying no. Yeah, that's great. Like if you are able to understand it, you are already doing a great job. Good to know that you are able to grasp this knowledge. Great. Okay, so let's move ahead. Okay, so the next thing is we need to do some hands-on. Okay, so what I want you guys to do, right? This is basically an assignment for you. Okay, so what I want to do is I want you to pick one online application that you use on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so for example, like Gmail is one application that you use for on a day-to-day basis, and there can be other application like a banking application. If you are using a net banking facility, right, of any bank, you have used that specific application, so you know how that works. So you can pick the banking application as well. Or if you are like using some other application that you can pick it up, which you use on a day-to-day basis, and based on that application, what I want to do is I want you to create a test scenario document. Okay, and create test 10 different test scenarios. Okay, and based on those scenarios, I want you to create at least like 10 test cases. Okay, and then perform test execution as well and update all those fields, create two defects. Okay, and then create a summary report. And what I'll be doing, right, for you to like help you with those creation, I'll be sharing the template document. Okay, the templates with you, and I'll be sharing this, the one which I'm sharing right now, not this one. but the QA templates, I'll be sharing this with you, and it should be in the PPT document as well, the one which I'll be sharing with you. Okay, so you need to download it on your local machine, and then you can upload it on in your Google Drive so that you can make that editor. And if you have like Microsoft Excel or Word in your local machine, then you can work right away. But what I would suggest, right, create a Google Drive folder, upload it there, and work on it so that you can it can be easy for you to share it in the Facebook group as well. Okay, so once you do that, creating 10 scenarios, creating 10 test cases, doing the execution and updating all the fields, creating two defects, and then creating a summary report. What I want you to do is I want you to share it in the Facebook group. Okay, the one which you have joined. If you haven't joined, and then I request you to join that group. Okay, and upload, share your Google Drive link, okay, in that Facebook group, and ask for a review. Okay, so what I'll be doing is I'll be going through those documents, and in case I have any comments, okay, I'll let you know. If everything is good, then also I'll let you know. But if there is any specific feedback, then I can go through it and I can give you a feedback on the artifacts. Okay, all right. Can you guys reply yes if you are going to do this assignment and post it on the Facebook group? Okay, great. And reason being why I am insisting on doing the assignment, right? Because unless and until you do the assignment, it won't help you. Because if you want to master the skill, right, of software testing, these are the basics thing that you need to understand if you want to go ahead with this as a career. Okay. And unless until you do hands-on, just going through the document, just going through the presentation, or just going through a session, or just rewatching the video a recording will not help you unless until you actually work on these concepts. Okay, so you need to do that. You have to do that if you want to excel in this field, and work on it, do hands-on, then only it will be easy for you to understand what exactly is the weakest point while working on this thing, and you can then work on that improvement area. Okay, so do that. And again, if you have any question, can you let me know in the Q&A section? We can have a quick discussion, okay, about the Q&A. Like we can use this 10-15 minutes to discuss on the question that you have. And if you have any questions, put it on the chat so that I can go through it and answer your question. And I'll be sharing, okay, both the blank template as well as these examples so that you can go through it. And what I want you to do is do the hands-on, okay, and post it on the chat. And I don't think you guys have any question, okay, on this specific topic. I'm assuming that the concepts that are taught is clear to you guys, and you don't have any question on this thing. So that's my assumption, because you are not asking any questions. So that's my assumption that you have all the knowledge, you gained everything, you gained all the knowledge that I taught in this specific session today. Okay, so this was about the day two. Okay, we spoke about like the hands-on part on how we can create scenario and all those stuff, execution report, how we created effect report, we understood the requirement document. So tomorrow, right, once you are done with the creating those artifacts, what we'll be doing tomorrow, we'll be talking about the portfolio creation. Okay, so portfolio creation is documenting the work that you have done. Okay, and this is very important because if you want to showcase your work, right, showcase your knowledge, it becomes very important to create a portfolio of the artifacts, so that if you want to send your resume, right, and you need to include that portfolio in the resume. And if you want to send, if you send a resume to a recruiter, okay, looking at the portfolio, they'll understand that you are very well versed with the software testing concept, and you know what exactly needs to be done as a software testing, and you know the job. Okay, and it becomes like very positive point for you, and for recruiter also, right? They can be like easy. It becomes very easy for them to pick you for the next round of the interview. So that is the reason why portfolio creation is important. Nobody talks about it. Okay, when you go for a training, right, somewhere else, nobody talks much about the portfolio creation. Why is it needed and all? But again, we'll be working here tomorrow to do the create the portfolio. I'll talk about how we can create a portfolio using a free tool. So there is no paid tools and needs to be used for creating the portfolio. Everything will be done using a free tool that I'll be showcasing it tomorrow. Okay. And once that is done, we'll be talking about the resume. What exactly are the important components of resume and what all things needs to be included as part of the resume as well. Okay. And then I'll be sharing the template for the resume, which you can use to create your own resume, and then what all things you need to include and why. And we'll talk about the application tracking system as well, ATS, which most of the companies use for tracking the application. And I'll talk about what needs to be done so that you get your resume gets picked up by the ATS system. Okay, so do's and don'ts. I'll talk more about it, what needs to be included, and how exactly you need to optimize your resume. Right, I'll be talking about that as well tomorrow, so that it gets picked up for the next round of interview by the ATS. Okay. So that's something which is very important for you if you are looking for a job, if you are looking for a new job, right? Or if you are looking for a career switch, then it becomes very important for you to understand this. And that's the reason why I'm insisting like tomorrow is going to be an important day, because the concept is something that you can learn like uh, from anywhere. But these things, right? If you don't understand how to present your resume, how to uh, optimize your resume, then you won't get a job, because the first step is to make sure the resume is picked up. Unless until it gets picked up right, you will never land a job. So that's the stage one, and which is very important. That's the reason why we should give 100% attention on how to create a resume. So once that is done, we'll have a resume creation workshop as well. And then I have another bonus for you as well for tomorrow that I have thought about. So I'll be sharing that bonus information on the WhatsApp chat. So make sure that if you haven't joined the WhatsApp chat, join the WhatsApp chat as well. So the WhatsApp chat link, right, should be in your initial registration email. So when you made the registration, you should have received an email from me with the WhatsApp chat link and the webinar registration link as well. So make sure you go to that email and join the WhatsApp group in case you haven't joined. And I'll be sharing more detail about that bonus tomorrow, which is going to be like very helpful for you for your resume preparation as well. So make sure you attend tomorrow's day three, which is very important. And then we'll conclude tomorrow, like in case with this resume creation. And yeah, in case you again, in case you have any questions, right, about what you learned today as well as in day one as well, make sure you ask me. Put the uh, add your question in the Facebook group, and that is where like I'll be replying to your questions. Okay, so put it on the Facebook group, and I'll make sure I respond to your questions. Okay, all right. So Mayur is asking, please send WhatsApp group link. Okay, all right. So I'll do that. Okay, just a second. Yeah, what I'll do, right, regarding the WhatsApp group, I'll can you drop me an email, Mayur? I can reply to that email. Okay, so here is my email ID, Prashant at aptudes.com, prashant@aptuts.com. Okay, I have pinged, I have posted it on chat window. Okay, just drop me an email. I can reply to that email with the WhatsApp link. Okay. Okay, all right. Then, if you don't have any questions, right? I don't see any questions from you guys. So I'm assuming if everything was clear for you guys, all the concepts and all. But make sure you do the assignment. I'll wait for the assignment on the Facebook group. In the Facebook group, post it in the Facebook group so that I can review it and reply. So you need not complete like everything in one go. Even if like the test scenario document is ready, right? You can post that link in the Facebook group. I'll review it. If let's say there are two documents that are ready, test scenario, test case, post those two documents and ask for the review. Okay. So that's what you need to do. That's what your homework is. And I'll wait for your response on the Facebook group. I'll wait for the assignment answers. Okay. All right then. If we don't have anything else, we can end this call. Okay. And then we can meet tomorrow at same time, 8:30 a.m. tomorrow. And then we will get started with day three session tomorrow. Okay, then have a good day. Yeah. Okay, Natraj, I'll share the test case document. I'll be sharing those links. So I'll be sharing this PPT document, right? The one which I shared today on the screen. So I'll be sharing that document. It has got like everything. It has got all the links to the test case templates as well as example documents. So you can go through it. So I'll be sharing that. Okay. Anything else? Anyone? Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Bye bye. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the day three, the 3 day challenge. Just a second. All right. So, can you guys let me know in the chat section if you are able to hear my voice? Can you please do that? Can you please type yes? Can you guys please reply yes if you are able to hear my voice? Okay, Mayur is saying yes. Good morning, Mayur. Right. Even session replied saying yes. Okay. Just give me a second. I'm just checking the messages. Rahul said yes. Great. All right. Yeah. Thanks, Amal, for replying. All right. So let's get started. Okay. So with day three of the 3 day challenge. And today it is going to be a very interesting session because you are going to learn a lot about resume and portfolio creation. And again, yeah, I'll talk about what we are going to talk, discuss, and learn in today's session. Okay. So I just want to recap. So in day one, right, we went through the basics of the software testing. We understood the concepts, all theoretical part. Okay. And in day two, we understood the hands-on part of the software testing, wherein we understood the requirement, and then we learned how to create test scenario, test cases, and how to execute it. So basically, the artifacts that are related to different phases of software testing, we went through that in day two, and we understood like how to create a defect, what is a defect, and what exactly defect report looks like, and the execution summary. So once the execution is done, what all things we need to include as part of the execution summary so that we can share that the entire execution summary to the client or the stakeholders. So that's something that we learned as part of day two. And as part of day three, right, today, as I mentioned, it is going to be very interesting, and it is going to be important as well. Okay, so it is an important session for you because a resume is something that will help you land a job. Okay, so without good resume, right, you won't be able to proceed ahead uh, with the different stages of interview. So unless and until you have a good resume, it will be impossible for you to move ahead. And that is the reason why resume is considered as like resume preparation is considered as a very important and critical phase of getting a job. Okay, so that is the most important thing, and you have to make sure that whenever you create a resume, it is optimized and it is up to date, and you'll have to make sure that all the information, right, that the recruiter is looking for, everything should be included in the resume uh, effectively. Okay, so that's something that we'll learn as part of today's session, and then we'll talk about the portfolio creation as well. How do we create a portfolio? And another reason being, creating a portfolio, right? It helps you to showcase your work in the resume. So once you create a portfolio, you'll be sharing that link in the resume, portfolio link in the resume. Okay, so that a recruiter, when he or she scans through your resume, by looking at the portfolio, he'll get a clear understanding of where exactly you stand, uh, your skill set, and all those stuff. Right? It will be you will be able to better demonstrate even before the interview process. Okay, and that's the reason why creating a portfolio is important. And yeah, so that's about what we are going to learn today. So let's move ahead. Okay, so the next thing, right? We'll talk about the portfolio creation. So if you remember yesterday, I mentioned about the portfolio creation where we'll be using a free tool. Okay, so that's what I'll be talking about, and how do we structure our um, structure the portfolio. That's something we'll be discussing. So the first thing, right? So if you want to create a portfolio, you'll have to create a Google account. I'm assuming that you guys already have a Google account available with you. Okay, you already are registered. Most of the folks, I'm not sure about 100%, but I would say 90-95% of the folks are already having their Gmail IDs. Okay, so the first thing is we'll have to create a Google account in case you do not have one. Okay, and once that is done, right, you'll have to access the URL drive.google.com. Okay, so this drive, right, Google Drive allows you to store the files. Okay, so in order to navigate to the Google Drive, and that's the URL drive.google.com, and within Google Drive folder, right, you have to create a folder. Okay, and named this thing. So the way I'm showing right on the screen right now. So here is a format that you need to follow. Your name hyphen QA profile. Okay, so that's something that you need to make sure you uh, create, okay, in your Google Drive folder. And once that is done, if you see within this thing, I have created a subfolder, okay, with the name portfolio for, and I have a placeholder for application name. So if you remember yesterday, I gave you one assignment, right, to pick one of the application and create different artifacts like test cases, test scenarios, execution report, defect report, and summary report. Okay, so that's something which we'll be using today. Okay, if you have not created those artifacts yet, I would recommend you to take out some time today to work on it and create those artifacts, because that's something which will become part of your portfolio. Okay, so yesterday I gave you an assignment for one application, but likewise, what I would recommend, right? I would recommend you to create like different portfolio, okay, or different artifacts for different applications. So if you choose like a banking application yesterday, maybe today or tomorrow, whenever you create another uh, project, right, you can pick another application that you most commonly use in your day-to-day life and create artifacts for those as well. So once that is done, you will create another subfolder here with the name portfolio for that specific application name. Okay. So let's say like you have created an portfolio for Citibank. Okay. So you can simply like create a subfolder saying that portfolio for Citibank. Okay, so that's something, that's how you can name this portfolio. And within that portfolio, right, if I go here, I have uploaded all the artifacts. One is test case, test scenario, and test execution report is within the test case document only, because we'll be updating that when we do the execution, right? So it's the same thing that we'll be using for execution. The test case that we have created, we'll simply update the last few columns that we have, actuals and who executed it, what is the status, pass, fail, or the defect ID in case we find a defect, along with the comments. So all those things, right, will be updated as in the same document, the test case document. So that's the reason I don't have a separate document here as test execution report, but we can make use of test cases document to update it. So I have scenario, test cases, defect report, and summary report. I have documented here. And again, if you see, right, I have made a numbered this document like the first document starting with zero. I'll talk about this project summary. Okay, so I started with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so that it displays in a sequential manner. Okay, and this looks very organized. Okay, if someone comes right and have a look at your portfolio, looking at this, right, they'll understand that you have the capability to organize, keep this stuff organized. Okay, so that's a very plus point when it comes to an interview, right? If let's say a recruiter visits your portfolio and he or she sees that your project folder, the portfolio that you have created, very well organized, then that is a plus added advantage for you as well. Okay, and there is a very high chance that they'll prefer you over some other candidate. Okay, so that is one thing. And the first document, right, for every project portfolio, I have added this read first document project summary, okay, and numbered it as 0. So it is the first document that someone has to read, okay. And if I open it, So this is what I have included. It's a small introduction kind of stuff, okay, which talks about what exactly this portfolio is about. Okay, if you see here, I have mentioned that in this folder you will find few artifacts and all this stuff for a specific application. Okay, and then there is a brief introduction about yourself, who exactly you are, okay, and what is your aspiration, or what exactly is your interest when you talk about the software testing, right? So you can talk about give a brief information about that. And then here I have mentioned, like, if it is not related to actual project, then you have to specify like why you have created this portfolio. Okay, so on what basis, or what was the reason for creating this, if not for the actual real-time project. Okay, so here, since this is a test project, right, we'll have to make sure that we tell the recruiter that this is not the real project. You created this project as part of your learning and development phase, okay, or as part of your learning. So that's what is mentioned here, saying that you have created after completing this 3-day challenge, and what this 3-day challenge is about. Okay, and then what exactly you learned as part of the program. So this is again very important, right? So someone goes through the portfolio, they'll get to know that what exactly your capabilities are, what exactly you learned as part of this 3-day challenge. So that's something which is also very important, because this will help you like showcase your skill set as part of this portfolio. Okay, and then yeah, and then you'll say like, if you have any question, you can say thanks, and maybe you can add your email ID as well here. Okay, so this is the common template that you need to use. And what I'll be doing, that I'll be sharing this template with you after this call. And what you guys need to do is, once I share this link, right, uh, I'll be sharing this specific folder with you. Okay, so it will be in the read-only format. You guys need to go here and download it on your local machine, and you can upload this specific folder uh, to your Google Drive directly. You won't be allowed to edit this specific folder, because this belongs to me. It is only for in the read-only format. You need to download it on your machine and then upload it to your Google Drive, so that you can then make necessary changes the way, whatever way you want. Okay, so this is how you create a portfolio. Okay, so once the portfolio is created, so the next thing is to make sure that you generate a link, so that you can add that link in your resume. Okay, in order to generate a link, right, so on the right hand side, there is this three dots, okay, saying more action on the extreme right hand side. Okay, so I need to click on it, and there is an option to share. Okay, click on share, and if you see the general access option, select, initially by default it will be restricted. Okay, you'll have to select anyone with the link. Okay, and then the uh, access level, right, it has to be a viewer. Okay, don't make anyone or editor or commenter, make sure it is a viewer, so that way when you share the link, right, if whoever gets the link and they want to view your profile, they will be able to view your profile in the read only mode. Okay, they won't be able to edit it. That way your files will be safe without any issue. Okay, so once this is done, click on copy link, and then you will get a link which you can simply paste it in your resume. And if user clicks on it, right, that user will directly come inside this folder. If there are multiple projects, then they will be able to see those multiple portfolios directly in the read-only mode. Okay, so that's how you create a portfolio, and that's the structure that you need to follow, so that it looks very organized, and that will be a plus point for you as well when you add it in a resume. Okay, and very few people, right, they add a portfolio in the resume. Okay, I have seen like hundreds of resumes, okay, of the students, and out of those hundreds, I have seen like one or two people adding, students adding the portfolio link in the resume. And it becomes very difficult to understand, like to assess if the candidate has got a good experience or not in the manual testing, or they have simply written about it. But if you have that link, right, as a recruiter, I'll be much confident. I'll be much like I'll be happy to see the portfolio. I'll be much confident in your capability in case I see the portfolio link in the resume. Okay, that way I'll understand as a recruiter that yeah, you know something, you know about manual testing, you know how to create artifacts, so you are a good fit for the processing of the interview, on the for the stages of the interview. Okay, so that's the reason why portfolio is important, and that's why I insist on adding a portfolio. Even like if you don't have a real time experience working on a project, then this is a good way. This is a great way to showcase your skills. Okay, so that's something that I wanted to highlight. Yeah, let's move ahead. If guys, if you have any question, right, please let me know in the comments if you have any specific question. If you don't have any question, can you please let me know? Can you please reply saying no on the chat? Okay, let's move ahead. Okay, so let's talk about, yeah, so this is about the portfolio that I showed you. Okay, now let's talk about creating a great resume. Okay, we don't want to create just a good resume. We want to make sure that we create a great resume. Okay, so that we get so our resume gets picked up in the interview process. Okay, by the recruiter. So that's something which will be our goal. Okay, and again, the goal, right, of the resume. So why exactly we need to create a resume? Okay, so we don't. So the primary goal of the resume, right, is not to get a job. Make this thing clear in your mind. Okay, it's not to get the job. The primary goal of the resume is to make sure that you get picked up by the recruiter for the interview. So that's the only goal of the resume and nothing else. The goal of the resume is to showcase your skill so that you get picked up by the recruiter for an interview. That's the only goal. The goal of resume is not to get a job. A resume will never get you a job. Okay, because once you share the resume, once it is picked, you'll have to make sure you attend the interview as well. Okay, without interview, you will never get a job. So, a goal of the resume is to make sure your resume gets picked up by the recruiter for the further interview stages. Okay, for the further recruitment stages. So that's something that you need to remember. You need to make this thing clear in your mind. Okay, so as part of creating a great resume, right, we'll have to first understand like the resume basics, and then that's something that I'll be talking about in the upcoming slide. We'll be talking about key components of the IT resume. What all components we need to consider while creating a resume, the things that needs to be mandatorily included as part of a resume, and then we'll be talking about showcasing the IT skills, how we can do that. I'll be showing you with the help of an example. I'll pick one of the resume of the past students and I'll show it to you. How do we include the roles and responsibilities and skill sets, okay, in the resume. And then a resume design tip. Okay, so I'll be talking about that, how to design a resume. So this is very important because if your resume is not well organized, right, it does not look clean, it does not look like uh, easy to read, and if it is very much cluttered, then it's a big no. Okay, for the recruiter, they'll simply reject the resume because the look and feel of the resume is also important. It should be like eye catching. Okay, and that is the reason why we need to have a detailed look on how the resume should look like. So design of the resume is also important. Okay, and then we'll be talking about tailoring your resume for a specific IT role. I'll talk about it. I'll be when we discuss this point, right? We'll be talking about the ATS system as well, application tracking system that most of the organization, most of the companies use to in today in their day-to-day recruitment workflow. So that's something that we'll be talking, and then we'll be going ahead with the Q&A section. Okay, at the end, and prior to that, as I promised yesterday on the WhatsApp chat, I'll be reviewing a couple of resumes today in this call. I received a couple of resumes from you guys. Okay, thanks for sending those resumes to my email ID. What I'll be doing, right? I'll be going through those resumes. I'll give you some feedback on the resume, how you can do the improvement and all. So that's something that we'll be talking today as well. Okay, followed by the Q&A section. All right, so let's talk about the resume basics. Okay, uh, as I mentioned, the goal of the resume is to get picked for an interview. Okay, so that's something which you need to remember and keep this thing in mind. Okay, whenever you create a resume, make this thing 100% clear in your mind. So that's the only goal. Okay, and again, a resume is a personal marketing tool which you will be using to market your skill set, to market your talent, to market your confidence in the skill set that you have. So it's a personal marketing tool where you try to sell yourself, okay, to the company. And then again, a good resume, right, it increases the chance of getting noticed by the recruiters. Okay, and that depends on different factors, the way you showcase your skill set. So one way is to create the portfolio. Okay, having that will increase the chance of getting noticed. And then the second is resume design as well. So if your resume is like eye soothing and it is very well organized, not cluttered, the font and all that are being that have you are used right is like consistent across the entire document. So that is another important thing that you need to consider. Okay, that recruitment team they consider, okay, while picking up the resume. So that increases the chance of getting noticed. And then the importance of keywords as well, right? So the keywords are like words specific to the job title or job description, whatever things you want, right? Like if you are, let's say, a recruiter is looking for a software QA, manual software tester. Okay, so in that case, right, the keyword is manual software tester. So that is the main keyword that the recruiter is looking for. Okay, someone who is looking. So recruiter is, let's take another example. If recruiter is looking for a performance tester. Okay, so performance testing is another keyword. Okay, so we need to make sure like we pick those keywords and make sure we include them in the resume as well. Okay, so that when the recruiter glance have a glance through your resume, right? They pick up that keyword as well. They understand that, yeah, this is something that I was looking for, and your resume has got this specific keyword. Yeah, then I'll go through it in detail and see like if you are a fit for the further processing or not. Okay, so that was about this thing about the resume basics, and let's talk about the key components of the resume. Okay, so a resume, right, a good resume has got a specific structure. Okay, so if you this is the structure how exactly the resume should look like, and these are the key components. Okay, so these are the things which are very important, which are very mandatory to have as part of the resume, and without these components, right, your resume will be incomplete. Okay, even if there is one missing part, one missing component, your resume will be termed as incomplete because it won't showcase your overall knowledge, or overall skill set, your overall experience, or like whatever that is mandatory, right? If even one component is not there, these out of these, then it will be termed as incomplete. So the key component of resume, the first thing is about the header and contact details. Okay, so that is very important. The header is like the top portion of the resume. Okay, the first thing that you see at the top. So it has to make sure that you uh, include your name, full name, phone number, email ID. Okay, so that's very important along with the address. So if you need not add the entire address, adding only like city and state, or if you are like applying it for a job outside of India, then country, you need to add country in that case. Okay, so all these things are important. So contact details, the way there has to be a way, right, for the recruiter to contact you. So that's the reason why it's very important to have contact details. Okay, and then the objective. What is your primary goal? Okay, as a software tester, right? What is your aim or what is your objective? So that is another thing that you need to include as part of the resume. Okay, so having an objective, right, it showcases like what your vision is. Okay, what exactly you are looking for yourself. Okay, as a software tester or whatever kind of role that you apply for, right, you need to make sure that you have an objective related to that a specific role. And then comes the professional summary. So this is another very important thing. Okay, so when you uh, apply for a job, right, you have to make sure that you showcase your professional summary as well. If you have any specific work experience, okay, so you have to make sure that you mention that as part of the professional summary. to showcase your skills. Okay, and if you don't have any work experience, if you are a total fresher, right, then you can showcase your professional experience as part of like the portfolio creation, the demo project or the test project that you worked on, right? You'll have to include that. And again, professional summary should not be like a detailed summary. It should be very on a very high level. Okay, some couple of key pointers like you worked on so and so tool, you worked on software testing, managed software testing, and then the bullet point can be like you worked on performance testing with JMeter tool, and then you were involved in the framework creation for the performance testing. You were involved in the client communication. So on a very high level, your overall summary, right? Your overall experience, just summarize it into a couple of bullet points and make sure you include them. The reason being, when someone will have, if a recruiter goes through your resume, right? Recruiter might not have time to understand to go through the detailed work experience. Okay, so in that case, what he or she will do is he or she will go through the professional summary to understand like what is the summary, what exactly you have worked on a very high level, and based on that, he or she will make the decision. Okay, to shortlist your resume or not. And then comes the work experience. Okay, work experience needs to be in a detailed format, like different companies. Let's say if you worked on two different companies, right? So company one, start and from date, the location of the company, roles, what was your roles and responsibilities, okay, in the bulleted format. And then after once that is done, company two, the same format, like from date to date, and then the location and the roles and responsibilities, and followed by the education details and the certification course in case you have any specific certificate, right? If you have attended a specific certification or you joined a specific program, okay, where you got a certificate of completion, you can include that as well. So that's very important. Again, if you have a certification, if you have a certificate, then that is an added advantage, okay, in getting shortlisted, because folks who has got certificate, right, of any program, then a recruiter value them more, considered comparing it with someone who does not have any specific certification. Okay, so that's very important to make sure that you add the certification information if you have uh, done that in the past. Okay, all right. So showcasing IT skill, you have to make sure that you showcase your IT skills. Since you are applying for an IT job, it is very important that you showcase your IT skills in the resume. Okay. And then there are two parts. Okay. One is technical skill, which is related to the technology. Like if you worked on the performance testing using JMeter, you have to make sure that you mention that I use JMeter tool. If you did automation with Selenium with Java, right? You can mention that like have an experience or have a knowledge of Selenium with Java. Okay. And again, the second part is soft skills. Okay. The first one is technical skills. Soft skill is majorly related to communication. Okay. So if you have like good communication skill, you can mention that client interaction, good and exposure to the client interaction. You can include that as well. If you have a good presentation skills, you can do that as well, creating presentation document and then presenting it to the larger audience, presenting it to the client, presenting it to the team. So you can mention those things in the soft skills section. Okay, so that's very important, showing your technical skills as well as soft skills. And in IT industry, right, it's very important to make sure you improve your soft skills as well. In addition to technical skills, you need to work on your soft skills as well, because most of the time, right, you will be working on the technical part, yeah, but you'll have a role and responsibility, okay, to showcase those technical skills. So what happens, right, when you work on any specific task in the IT industry, you have to present those to the team as well as to the client as well, in many cases. Okay, and that's where the soft skills, communication skills, plays a very important role. Okay, so that's the reason why I'm saying, like, in addition to technical skills, make sure that you work on improvement of the soft skills as well. Okay. All right. So before I move ahead, right, I just wanted to ask you, do you guys have any question? Can you reply the on the Q&A chat? Yeah, Amal, could you, so Amal asked a question. Could you please share the most soft skills, must soft skills. So as I mentioned, the two most important thing is communication skills, okay, and presentation skills. So these are the two most important soft skills that you need to have, like presentation skills to present it to the larger audience, creating the document. That is one thing. And then the communication, so that you can communicate effectively within the team as well as with the client as well. So these are the two most must have soft skill. And again, you need not be like very proficient in these skills. If you have like, if you are able to like communicate even a little bit, right, like not that confidently, but you are able to convey your point of view to the other person, that is also okay. Okay, you need not be like very fluent in English. That's not something anyone expects. Okay, considering like in India, right, most of the folks are not that much fluent while talking in English language. Okay, that's totally okay. As a recruiter, right, when I recruit, when I hire a candidate, or when I take an interview, right, of a candidate, I see if that person, right, the candidate, if he or she is effectively able to share or communicate his point, even if with a broken English, or if he or she is not that fluent, right, if he is capable of sharing his point of view, if he is capable of communicating what exactly he wants to communicate, that should be more than enough. Okay, and so that's what I want to highlight here. And then second is about the presentation also, how you present yourself, how you articulate things, present yourself, and create a presentation, or present things, or present on a topic to the other person. So that's something also very important. Okay, and presentation skills, right, and that you can easily showcase in your resume. Okay, and by making sure that your resume looks like neat and clean, that is one way to show that you have got a good presentation skills. Okay, so these are the must soft skills for QA. Any other question, anyone? If you don't have any question, can you please let me like type in no? All right, so I'll move ahead, okay, with the resume design. So when you create a resume, right, there are few things that you need to take into consideration. Okay. So the first thing is regarding the professional layout of the resume. You have to make sure that your resume looks clean, okay, and it looks professional. The layout that you use, right, looks professional as well as clean. I'll show you the template, okay, after this slide, uh, to help you understand how exactly what exactly I'm talking about. But you need to remember this: your resume needs to look clean and professional. It should not be cluttered. Okay, it should be like the different sections of the resume that you have, right? You should be able to distinguish, like create a separation between those sections. Okay, it should not happen that all the sections are very closely tied, closely held, or very close to each other. It becomes very difficult for someone to have a glance at your resume, because everything is too cluttered. And again, having such kind of experience, right, while going through the resume, as a recruiter personally, if you ask me, right, if I go through a resume which has got like too many sections very close to each other, which is not well separated by the white space, then I'll say that yeah, this is not good. It's a pain for me to read, and it is not looking professional. It's not present, again, it's not something which is not like well presented, so I'll simply reject that resume. Okay, then that is the reason why it has to be like clean and professional and easy to read. Okay, and related to that, like as I mentioned, we need to make sure that the different sections are organized clearly. Okay, are organized with the white space between them, so that it is well separated. Okay, and then there is another important thing that you need to consider. Okay, so considering the resume, okay, make sure that you organize it, you order it in the reverse chronological order. Okay, so let's say you have three different jobs. Okay, so the most recent job, right, when you talk about the work experience, it has to be at the top, the most recent one. Then the next one should be at the second position, and then the for your first job, okay, will need to be at the third position. Okay, it should be in the reverse order, in the descending order. Okay, the most latest should be in the top, and then comes the next one, and then comes the previous uh, work. Okay, so that's something that you need to make sure you include it in your resume. And then for achievement section, right, make sure that you do not clutter your resume by adding very big paragraphs of the achievement. It has to be crisp and clear. Okay, it has to be short, very high level. Okay, and make sure that if you have like 10 different achievements, right, make sure you add a bullet point and and have like one achievement on each line. Okay, that way it will be easy for anyone to read it, and that will again be a plus point. And then the next thing is to highlight key information. Okay, so let's say you are working, you have added your achievement saying that you have added a skill set. Okay, or in the description or in the professional summary, okay, you mentioned that you have worked on a you have worked as a software manual software tester. Okay, or you have worked as a performance QA using JMeter. So highlight the important keyword. Okay, here, so in the first one it says that you have worked as a manual software tester. So manual software tester is a keyword. Okay, that's something which is very important to highlight. So make sure you select that and make it as bold. Okay, so I'll quickly show you. I'm talking about this. So this is one of the resume the from my student. Okay. So if you see here, this guy has mentioned about the professional skill, experience in writing test scenario and manual test cases as per SRS. Okay, requirement document specification. So this thing he has highlighted. Okay. So looking at this resume, I now come to know that yeah. So this guy has worked on test case scenario creation, test cases, and then he has core Java programming, Selenium WebDriver knowledge, and then he has logged a different. He has used Jira, GitHub, and he has troubleshooting experience, and he has experience in conducting interview. He has worked on mobile application as well, banking, financial. He has got information knowledge about bug life cycle. So this helps, right? Look, when you highlight it, it becomes very easy for an eye to quickly scan through the resume and pick up the important key points. Okay, and that is the reason why I'm saying it is very important to highlight key information. Okay, and then use consistent formatting and dates. And this again relates to the first point, making sure that your resume looks professional, the fonts and everything, right? The font type, everything, and dates also, right? So we need to make sure that the date format is consistent. Like let's say DDMMYYYY, right? That we use in India. And we need to make sure if you are creating a resume for India for Indian employer, or let's say here in India, right? You have to make sure you follow that specific date across the entire resume. And if you're applying for a job outside of India, let's say in US, right, the format used is something different. It's MMDD YYYY. Okay, so in that case, you need to make sure that you use that specific date format, and again across the entire resume, right? You have to make sure that you follow the same format. It should not happen that at one place you use DDMMYYYY, and then at the other location within the same resume you use MMDDYYYY. Okay, don't do that. Make sure the dates are consistent. Okay, and then the limit the length of the resume. Again, you do not want your resume to be like 10 pages long or 20 pages long. Nobody is going to read it. If someone finds that resume right, like 20 pages long, they'll simply like shift delete it, remove it from their system, because no one who is going to read such a long resume. So make sure that the information that you add in the resume, right, is concise and it's specific, and you cut down on the number of words in the resume to make it short, so that you make sure that your resume, right, it should convey everything, but it should not be like two long paragraphs. Okay, so limit the length to maximum 4 pages, or length of the resume to 4 or 5 pages. In 3 to 5, anything between that should be good. Okay, if you have an experience, but if you don't have any work experience, right, if you are working on a test project, then maybe like 2 or 3 pages resume should be fine. Okay, if you are a fresher, but again, if you have like good experience working on the project, then maybe 3 to 5 pages should be pretty good, not more than that. Okay, four is ideal. Like anything less than four is ideal. But if you want to stretch it, right, if something that like you have worked on 10 different projects, but and there is no way you can cut down on the information, then maybe maximum five you can go, not more than that. Okay, and then tailor for digital use. Make sure that you create a PDF of the Word document. Okay, and uh, so that it can be accessed anywhere, because not everyone has got the Word license for the Word document. Okay, or not everyone can access the Word document. Let's say on my mobile application, right? It becomes very easy for me to like access the PDF. If I'm going through the application, if I'm going to the mobile email on my mobile phone, then it becomes very easy for me to access the resume if it is in the PDF format. But if it is in the Word format, then I might not be able to access it, and then that is a big deterrent or big no for me. I might not have a look at your resume because I'm not able to access it. So make sure that it is in the format that can be easily accessible. Okay. And there is one more instance that I want to tell you. Okay, so what happened, right? So for the resume review, one of my past student, he shared a resume yesterday with me. Okay, and that was in the doc format. And I was traveling, and I was on my mobile phone. I got that email. I had a look. I clicked on that link, but it was not opening because it was in the docx format, and there was some issue on my mobile phone for the docx, and I could not go through it yesterday, and then that led to the delay in the resume review. So that is one example that I want to share, and that can cause delay with your resume uh, selection as well, in case like the format that you share is not uh, tailored for the digital use. Okay, and then there is one more thing regarding the video introduction. Okay, this is optional, but it's good to have. So if it is possible, right, what I would suggest is like take 1 minute video, take a camera, okay, with the front camera, take 1 minute video, giving an introduction about yourself. Okay, about your name and your work experience, how many experience that you have, and then what is the primary role that you perform. Okay, so just simple things like 1 minute video saying that, hey, my name is so and so. I have like 10 years of experience or 1 year of experience in the IT industry, or I'm a fresher, but I have worked on different projects, uh, test project, and created a portfolio for them. I have experience creating the test cases, test scenario, test plan, and then test strategy, execution report. Like that, you can just have a 1 minute video, okay, and upload it on YouTube. Okay, and then once you get the link, right, you can share it in your resume. So that way, what happens, right? Let's say if a recruiter goes through your resume and he or she sees the video introduction, they can click on it and view your video. Okay, that way what happens, right? Even prior to the interview process, they know that how comfortable you are communicating, then your presentation skills as well, and the way you talk, all those stuff is again, they'll be able to better assess you even before the interview. And if it is a good video, right, then without any thought, they'll go ahead with your resume for the further rounds of interview. Okay, so that's the reason why it is good to have. Nobody talks about this part. Okay, but again, it's good to have. Uh, Again, it's optional, but if you add a video interview introduction, right, then it will be like added advantage for you. Okay, so that's again something that you can take into consideration. Okay, so before I move ahead, any question, anyone, can you please post it on the chat, on the Q&A section? And again, if you don't have any question, can you let me know by saying no? Can you do that? Can you please type in no? Okay, I'll wait for 1 minute. Okay, if you have any question, then please let me know. All right. So, Amal, regarding interview questions for QA, right? So, interview questions for QA is not part of this challenge, okay, because we are not going to understand like the do's and don'ts of the interview process. It won't be part of this challenge. Okay, so we won't be covering that as part of this 3-day challenge as interview questions. So, any specific thing related to the resume, we can discuss about it. Okay. Is ISTQB necessary? Good to have, but not mandatory. If you ask me, I have 15 years of experience in the IT industry, and I do not have ISTQB certification. Okay, but I, but the thing is, I have skilled myself from manual QA to automation to performance. That is very important. Okay, upscaling yourself. Only just getting stuck with manual testing is not sufficient. If you are not doing certification right, you have to make sure that you upskill yourself. Like if you have learned manual testing, make sure you learn performance testing as well, okay, and automation testing as well. So that's important. Upskilling yourself, making sure that you learn different technologies. Okay. So that's important. And having a specific certification is not always mandatory, but it is good to have in case like you are looking for a job, right? Then having a certification adds more value to your resume. But if you're already in a job, and then it doesn't matter, like unless until you want to switch, right? It doesn't matter much. But if you are fresh, if you are looking for a job, then having some kind of certification is very important. Okay. And ISTQB, right? It is majorly like theoretical. Okay. So what I would suggest, have something like, even if you do ISTQB, right, make sure you work on the portfolio, create a portfolio and showcase something like tangible thing uh, in your resume. Okay. Having, yeah, just to summarize, having a ISTQB is good to have if you are ISTQB or any kind of certification. Okay, is good to have if you are looking for a job. How to do ISTQB certification. So there are many, like if you go to their site, right? If you Google search ISTQB, you should find some option there. What I can do, right? I can try to find it out how we can do that, because as I mentioned, I have not done ISTQB, so I'm not sure. But there are many agencies available in the market who will help you with the ISTQB certification. Uh, so I don't know about the charges and all, but there are companies that who help student do the ISTQB certification. They teach the advanced software testing, okay, advanced software testing skills, and how to prepare for the ISTQB, and they enroll you to the IST for the ISTQB exam as well. So there are organizations, there are companies who does that, okay. So I don't have much information about who does it, because I have not done the ISTQB certification. All right, any other question, anyone? And Sachin, right? So what I'll be doing, that I'll try to find out more information about that, and if I find it, I'll share it with you after this call. Okay. All right. And cover letter, again, it's optional, not mandatory. You can include cover letter as well, but yeah, if you have everything right in the resume at the front page, all the things that is needed, like the summary section, all those things, then cover letter is not needed, because you are anyways going to cover those things in the first page of the resume. So cover letter is not that important. So main thing is about your actual resume. If you are able to summarize everything right in the first page, then that is equivalent to having cover letter. If cover letter is for someone like who has got a lot of information to share in the resume, and who is not that capable of reducing the uh, content of the resume, for that person, like letter makes sense, wherein they can summarize about their experience. But if you have a resume that is clean, clear, of any clutter that I'm going to show you, then cover letter is not that important to have. Right. Okay. So I don't see any other question. Okay. So let's move ahead. Can you see the font? Do I need to increase the size of the font? Are you able to see it? Okay. All right. I think you guys are able to see it clearly. Okay. So this is one of the format. Okay. The template that I'll be sharing with you. Okay. So if you see here, right, this resume, this is like right now it's a template. Okay. It does not consist of any kind of information. If you see, this resume is very clean. Okay. It looks professional. The font that I'm using, right, it looks very professional, and then it is free of any clutter. Like there is a good distinction between different sections here in the resume. And this first page, right, this talks more about the summary of your work experience, or summary about yourself on a very high level. Everything about the candidate will be found here in the first page. Okay. So that's how the structure of the resume should look like. This is how your resume should look like ideally. So, and it is good to have on the left hand side, right, I have added a section here for the a photo, okay? And if you have a good professional photo, right, make sure it is professional. It's not something like a selfie or someone took your photo, the party related photo or something like that, okay? So make sure that it is not it is professional looking, okay? Add a photo, and if you see this template, it has got your name here. A job role has to be included as part of your resume, and then the number of years of experience. So this is something which I see that not all candidate include in their resume. Most of the folks do not include like total number of years of experience, okay? So that's something which I want to highlight here. Make sure when you create a resume, in the header section, make sure you add the total number of years of experience, okay? That's very important to have, because nobody is going to like go through the detailed work experience section and add and keep on adding the number of years to see how many years of experience you have. So nobody is going to do that, okay? So that's the reason why it is your responsibility to showcase that you are creating a resume. It is your marketing tool, so it is your responsibility to make sure that you uh, show the number of years of experience in your resume, okay, rather than expecting the recruiter to go through your work experience and make that calculation. Make their job easy, and they'll make sure that your resume gets picked up. Okay. So that is one thing. And then on the left hand side, if you see, I have added the about section as well. So you can use this specific text, whatever I have, or you can create your own. Okay, about. So this is a brief summary about myself. Okay. So what I mentioned here, detail oriented and result driven IT software QA tester, and I'm passionate about ensuring the highest quality product standard through a meticulous testing, problem solving, and a committed to delivering efficient and reliable solution. Okay, so I'm talking briefly about myself. This is a very high level summary of me. Okay, what I'm passionate about, what I am. So this specific statement, right, it shows that I am a QA software tester, and I am passionate about providing high quality, making sure that these software is of very high quality standard. Okay, through testing the process that I follow, like problem solving and my commitment to delivering efficient and reliable solution. So you can add a one-liner like this thing. Okay, you can use this same exact same text, or you can create your own. And then the second thing is regarding the contact information. If you remember, I mentioned about the contact information, which is very important to have as part of your resume. So that's something we can include it here as well. And then the hobbies, if you have any specific hobbies, you can add those things here. So this thing, right, on the left hand side, it talks more about yourself, okay, about you, about your contacts, and about your personality in terms of hobbies. Okay, when you talk about hobbies, right, that showcase your personality, like what your interests are and all those stuff. Okay, so the left hand side, along with the photo, it talks purely about yourself. Okay, we are making a distinction here. See, on the left hand side, it's totally about yourself. On the right hand side, it's more about the work experience, your job, and your educational experience. Okay, so on the right hand side, as I mentioned, add a name, job role, work experience, and then relevant work experience. That's something that you need to include. Okay, when I say relevant work experience, right? So let's say you are applying for a job for manual QA. Then make sure that your specific experience related to manual testing is highlighted here in the first page. Okay, the company name, job title, and your roles and responsibilities. If you have link to portfolio, right, make sure you add that link to the portfolio. And this is very important, okay, having a relevant experience. And because what happens, right, your resume can have like a lot of work experience information, and you do not want a recruiter to like scan through your work experience to understand like where exactly you fit. Okay, and your primary job is to make sure that you make the work easy for recruiter. You make that task easy by providing all the relevant information upfront. Okay, so having a relevant information will make sure that you quickly show them that you have this relevant experience. Okay, and then about the education, name of the institute, from date to date, field of study, grade, that is also important. Make sure it is in the chronological reverse order. Okay, and then the relevant skill sets. So again, the same thing, if you're applying for a specific job, right, make sure that the skill sets needed for that job is included here as under the relevant skill technical skills. Okay, so this first page, right, it is more about your uh, detail, okay, about your personality and your most relevant, like your relevant work experience and relevant skill sets. Okay, so that's important, the first page. And if you see here, this looks very professional and it is conveying all the information, right, that a recruiter is looking for a specific job. So that's important here. And then the second page talks about the work experience. So this is where you will list down in detail all the work experience that you have. Let's say you have worked on 5 different companies, right? And make sure you include that in the chronological order, reverse order. Here under the work experience, like first company, job title, from to location, and description of your roles and responsibilities. Make sure that you use bullet points here. You don't add a paragraph, okay? And keep it short, don't make it like too long. It should be very easy for you. So the, as I mentioned here, the goal of this resume should be to make it easy for the recruiter to go through your the document that you create. Okay, and once that is done, you need to add the skill sets, technical skills here. So the first page, right, it was relevant, specific to skill set, specific to the job requirement. But here you will define, you will document everything that you have, like all the skills you have for the from the current job, previous job, from your total experience, right? Whatever technical skills you have got, you need to document here, and then the other skills, soft skills, you need to document here, and then achievements in case you have achieved any received any kind of award, right, and during your professional work experience, or even like a specific thing outside of the project or outside of the IT industry related work, you can document it, okay, as part of the achievement. And then we have a certification section wherein you can list the different certification, like ISTQB certification, or if you did any specific program, right, you can do that. You can showcase that as part of the certification um, section. Okay, so this is the structure and this is the template that you can follow for creating the resume. Okay, so this is one template that I have. Then there is another one. Okay, so this is another format. Okay, it does not have the photo, but again, you can make use of this format as well. If you uh, prefer this specific format, you can use this as well. Okay, and, and then there is another template that I have created. Just a second. This is the third template that I'll be sharing with you. So if you see here, the difference in this template is like here I have added a link to the YouTube introduction. Okay, but again, it's optional. You can do this, and again, if you want to use some other template, right, and add this link, then you can do that as well. Okay, so this is the template, and what I'll be doing, right, I'll be sharing this template with you after this call, and you can visit. So I'll be sharing the link to the Word document so that you can download it and edit the Word document and create the resume for yourself. Okay, and I'll quickly talk about the, just a second. That was about resume, and yeah, so here is the download link. So I'll be sharing these slide deck with you after this call. You can visit this download link, okay, and then download this specific resume.